The car is still, but the world is not. Outside, a symphony of frustration, the blare of horns, the distant siren, the shimmering heat rising from the asphalt, or perhaps the cold, sterile glow of streetlights on wet pavement. Inside the car, another storm rages, a silent, chaotic hurricane of the mind. A meeting you are now late for, an argument from this morning replaying on a loop, the looming shadow of bills to be paid, the gnawing feeling that you are falling behind in a race you don't remember starting. The body keeps score, a clenched jaw, a tightness in the chest, the shallow breath of anxiety. You feel trapped, powerless, a prisoner of circumstance, watching the seconds of your life tick away with agonizing slowness. This moment is not just a moment, it is a portrait of the modern condition, a life spent in a state of constant, low-grade resistance to what is. We are taught to believe that peace, that happiness, is a destination we will arrive at once we solve all the problems, once the traffic clears, once the bills are paid, once we achieve the next goal. We live in a perpetual state of if only this were different, then I could be happy. We are at war with reality, and it is a war we can never win. But what if there was another way? What if the path to peace was not through changing the world outside, but by transforming the world within? What if the source of our suffering was not the traffic jam, but our furious, desperate struggle against it? There is an ancient wisdom, a quiet stream of clarity that has flowed for centuries beneath the noise of human striving. It does not promise to make the traffic disappear, or to silence the horns, or to pay your bills. It offers something far more profound, far more revolutionary, the ability to find stillness in the midst of the storm, to find freedom even when you are trapped. This is the path of Zen, a journey that begins not with a command, but with a gentle, powerful observation. A truth that can, if you let it, change everything. The simple, radical idea that everything, this moment, this traffic, this anxiety, is exactly as it must be. Let us begin this journey together, not to escape from life, but to finally, truly arrive in it. To understand how we can find peace, we must first understand the anatomy of our own distress. We must look closely at the texture of our anxiety, the origin of our sorrow, and see it not as a monolithic, unassailable force, but as a process, a chain of events that we, unknowingly, participate in. The Buddha, with his profound clarity, offered a simple yet powerful metaphor for this process, a story that serves as a key to unlock one of life's most persistent cages. This is the teaching of the second arrow. Imagine a person walking through a forest. Suddenly, from the shadows, an arrow flies through the air and strikes them in the leg. The pain is immediate, sharp, and real. It is an undeniable fact of the moment. This, the Buddha said, is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of human existence. It is sickness, it is loss, it is the aging of our bodies, the death of a loved one. It is the car that breaks down, the project that fails, the harsh words spoken by a friend. These are the given circumstances of life, the inherent challenges of being a fragile human in a vast and unpredictable universe. They are painful, yes, but they are also impersonal. They are not punishments. They are simply events. A first arrow strikes everyone, without exception. It is the price of admission to this life. But then, the Buddha continued, this person does something extraordinary, something deeply strange. After being struck by the first arrow, they take a second arrow from their own quiver, and they deliberately plunge it into the same wound. The pain now multiplies. It is no longer just the sharp sting of the initial injury, but a throbbing, searing agony, compounded by shock, confusion, and despair. This, the Buddha said, is the second arrow. This is the arrow of our reaction. It is the arrow of judgment, of resistance, of storytelling. It is the arrow we fire at ourselves. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is suffering. Let us look closely at this second arrow, for it is the one we have control over. The first arrow, the initial event, happens. A person criticizes your work. That is the first arrow. The pain is a brief sting of embarrassment or disappointment. But then, the mind begins its work. The second arrow is the thought. This is a disaster. I am a failure. A third arrow follows. My boss must think I'm incompetent. I'm surely going to be fired. A fourth. How could they say that to me? It's so unfair, so unjust. A fifth. This always happens to me. Nothing ever goes right. All night long, you lie in bed, replaying the moment, feeling the sting over and over again. You are no longer feeling the pain of the initial criticism. You are now drowning in the suffering you are creating with your own thoughts. You are stabbing yourself again and again with these secondary arrows of rumination, catastrophizing, and self-pity. The first arrow is the physical sensation of a headache. The second arrow is the thought, I can't deal with this right now. This is going to ruin my whole day. Why is this happening to me? The first arrow is the loneliness you feel on a quiet evening. The second arrow is the story that you are unlovable and will be alone forever. The first arrow is a fact. The second arrow is a fiction, a narrative we weave around the fact. This narrative is the true source of our deepest torment. It is the difference between clean pain and dirty, infected suffering. Clean pain is the direct experience of life's first arrows. It is pure, it is momentary, and it passes. Dirty suffering is what happens when we smear that clean pain with the mud of our judgments, our fears, our stories. We refuse to simply feel the pain, and instead, we think about it, analyze it, resist it, and amplify it until it becomes our entire reality. The core of this self-inflicted suffering is a deep-seated resistance to what is. We have a blueprint in our minds for how life should be. People should be kind, our bodies should be healthy, our plans should succeed. And when reality presents us with something that doesn't fit our blueprint, we declare it wrong. This declaration of wrongness is the second arrow. We are not just experiencing an unwanted event, we are fighting a war with reality itself. And in this war, we are the only casualty. The universe does not care about our blueprints. The rain falls whether we think it should or not. People act according to their own conditions, not our expectations. To insist that reality conform to our wishes is the definition of insanity, yet we do it every single day. So how do we stop firing these arrows at ourselves? The answer lies not in trying to build a shield to block the first arrows. That is impossible. Life will always have its challenges. The answer lies in cultivating the awareness to see the second arrow in our hand before we fire it. This is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the capacity to pay attention to the present moment without judgment. It is creating a small space of stillness between the event and our reaction to it. When the first arrow strikes, the initial pain arises, a feeling of anger, of sadness, of fear. The untrained mind immediately identifies with this feeling. It says, I am angry. It becomes the anger. And from that place of anger, it fires the second arrow. Blame, resentment, harsh words. But the mindful mind, the trained mind, does something different. It sees the feeling arise and says, there is anger here. I feel the sensation of anger in my body, a heat in the chest, a tension in the shoulders. By simply noticing it as a temporary phenomenon, a weather pattern passing through the vast sky of awareness, we create a gap. In that gap, there is space. In that space, there is freedom. In that freedom, there is choice. We can choose to simply observe the anger without acting on it. We can choose to breathe into the sensation of sadness without weaving a story of permanent loss around it. We can feel the sharp sting of fear without allowing it to spiral into a full-blown catastrophe fantasy. This is not suppression. Suppression is forcefully pushing a feeling down, which only gives it more power. This is acknowledgement. We acknowledge the pain of the first arrow, we let it be there. We might even offer it some compassion, as we would for a wounded friend. We can say to ourselves, this hurts. It is okay that this hurts. By doing this, we are tending to the initial wound with gentleness, rather than stabbing it with another arrow. This choice, this capacity to hold our pain with awareness rather than resistance, is the most powerful skill we can develop. It is the skill of being our own friend, rather than our own tormentor. We learn to see the patterns of our mind, the specific types of second arrows we tend to favor. Perhaps your arrow is self-criticism. Perhaps it is blame. Perhaps it is helpless despair. By watching it with patient, non-judgmental awareness, the pattern begins to lose its power. You see the arrow for what it is, just a thought, just a story. It is not the truth. It is not you. Understanding this mechanism of the second arrow is the first profound step toward liberation. It shifts the focus from trying to control an uncontrollable world to learning to manage our own responsive mind. It reveals that the greater part of our suffering does not come from the events of our lives, but from what we tell ourselves about those events. The pain of life is inevitable, but the suffering, the second, third, and fourth arrows are optional. We have the power to lay down our own weapon. Now that we understand this crucial mechanism of how we create our own suffering, we can begin to look even more deeply at the nature of existence itself, at the very fabric of those first arrows. This brings us to the Buddha's first noble truth, the profound and often misunderstood reality of dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of a conditioned life. Having learned not to wound ourselves with a second arrow, we now find the courage to look squarely at the first. We turn our attention away from the stories we tell about our pain and toward the pain itself. What is this fundamental quality of life that so often feels unsettled, incomplete, or overtly painful? The Buddha gave this condition a name, a Pali word that is perhaps the most crucial and most misunderstood concept in all of his teachings. That word is dukkha. Often translated simply as suffering, this translation is incomplete. It fails to capture the nuance, the subtlety, and the profound depth of the diagnosis. To hear the first noble truth, there is dukkha, as life is suffering, is to mistake it for a statement of pessimism, a morbid and depressing worldview. But this is not its intention. The Buddha was not a pessimist. He was a physician, a spiritual doctor of unparalleled skill. And his first truth is not a verdict. It is a diagnosis. Imagine going to a doctor after months of feeling unwell. The doctor runs tests, examines you carefully, and finally says, "You have an illness." This is not bad news. This is the best possible news, because only with a clear diagnosis can a path to healing begin. To deny the illness, to pretend the symptoms aren't there, is to guarantee that the disease will fester. The declaration of dukkha is that moment of radical honesty. It is the courageous act of looking at the human condition without flinching, without the filters of wishful thinking or desperate positivity, and acknowledging the fundamental friction of our existence. There is a story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. The story of a young mother named Kisa Gautami. Her first and only child had died, and consumed by a grief so vast it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She wandered from house to house, clutching the small, still body, begging for a medicine that could restore his life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha. She laid her child at his feet and pleaded for the magical cure she so desperately sought. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and gave her a strange prescription. He told her he could help, but first, she must bring him a single mustard seed from a house in the village that had never known death. Hopeful, Kisa Gotami began her search. At the first house, she asked for the seed, and the family was happy to give it. But when she asked the vital question, "Has this house ever known death?" they looked at her with sadness. "The living are few," they said, "but the dead are many. We lost a father just last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had a story of loss: a husband, a wife, a child, a parent. As the sun began to set, the truth slowly dawned on Kisa Gotami, not as a brutal blow, but as a deep, communal sorrow. Her grief was not hers alone. The first arrow of loss had struck every home. It was not a unique punishment inflicted upon her. It was the shared, universal condition of being human. In that realization, her frantic, personal agony softened into a vast, compassionate understanding. She returned not with a mustard seed, but with a healed heart, ready to truly see. This is the first and most obvious form of dukkha, what is called dukkha dukkha, the pain of pain. It is the suffering of Kisa Gotami's loss. It is the pain of a diseased body, the sting of betrayal, the ache of hunger, the despair of failure. It is the direct and unavoidable suffering caused by the unwelcome events of the world. It is the raw, sharp edge of the first arrow. We all know this form of dukkha intimately. It needs little explanation, only courageous acknowledgement. But the Buddha's diagnosis goes deeper. The second form is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is a more subtle and perhaps more pervasive form of dissatisfaction. It is the suffering inherent in the fact that even pleasant experiences are impermanent. Think of a perfect vacation. The sun is warm, the company is good, the mind is relaxed, there is happiness. But underneath that happiness, there is often a quiet, nagging anxiety, the knowledge that this will end. The clock is ticking. Soon it will be time to pack the bags, to return to work, to the normal routines. This knowledge taints the present joy. The pleasure itself contains the seed of its own demise. We experience a moment of great success, a promotion at work. The initial elation is real, but it quickly gives way to the pressure to maintain that success, the fear of losing the new position. The joy of a new relationship is tinged with the fear of a future breakup. We cling to these happy moments, trying to freeze them in time, but reality is a flowing river, not a frozen photograph. Our struggle against this flow, our attachment to pleasant states in an impermanent world, is a constant source of low-grade suffering. The very things that make us happy also make us suffer, because they change, they fade, they disappear. The third and most profound level of the diagnosis is sankhara dukkha, the all-pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. This is the most difficult to grasp, because it is the very background radiation of our lives. It is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of being a self that is not solid, stable, or in control. It is the subtle, underlying stress that comes from being a composite, conditioned being. What you call you is a temporary coalition of a body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. All of these components are in a constant state of flux, arising and passing away from moment to moment, dependent on countless conditions outside of your control: the food you ate, the air you breathe, the words you heard, the genes you inherited. There is no solid, unchanging CEO in the headquarters of your mind. This inherent instability, this lack of a solid core, This feeling of being a process rather than a thing is Sankhara Dukkha. It is the friction of existence itself. It is the deep-seated existential anxiety that we try to soothe with endless distractions, with building a strong ego, with acquiring possessions and accomplishments to prove to ourselves that we are solid, real, and in control. But it is a project doomed to fail, and the effort itself is a form of deep, subtle stress. To embrace the first noble truth, then, is to accept all three forms of dukkha. It is to accept the reality of sickness and loss. It is to accept that happiness is fleeting, and it is to accept the inherent instability of our own being. This is not a dark and gloomy vision of life. It is the opposite. It is the end of the exhausting game of pretend. It is the relief of putting down a heavy bag you didn't even realize you were carrying. For centuries in the West, we have been taught to deny dukkha, to seek perpetual happiness, to wage war on discomfort, to present a polished, perfect version of ourselves to the world. And this denial is the very source of our collective anxiety. By finally having the courage to say, yes, there is friction. Yes, there is pain. Yes, there is dissatisfaction. We stop fighting a losing battle. We stop adding the second arrow of judgment onto the first arrow of reality. We align ourselves with the truth. Kisa Gautami's healing did not come from resurrecting her child. It came from seeing the truth of her situation with clarity and compassion. Her healing began with her diagnosis. Now that we have bravely looked at the diagnosis, we can ask the next logical question of the physician. If this is the condition, what is its cause? What is the root, the pathogen, that gives rise to this pervasive sense of unease? This question leads us directly to the second noble truth, to the investigation of a powerful force within our own minds called tanha, the thirst or craving that drives the engine of dukkha. We have stood before the mirror and acknowledged the nature of our condition, the fundamental dis-ease the Buddha called dukkha. We have seen its different textures, the sharp pain of loss, the subtle sorrow of change, and the deep, underlying friction of a conditioned existence. Now, like a skilled physician who has completed a diagnosis, we must look for the cause. If dukkha is the fever, what is the virus? If it is the symptom, what is the root of the illness? The Buddha's second noble truth answers this question with surgical precision. He states that the origin of dukkha is tanha, another Pali word, which translates as thirst, craving, or desire. This is not a casual want or a simple preference. Tanha is a deep, primal, and insatiable thirst. It is the engine that drives us, the restless energy that keeps us perpetually seeking something outside of ourselves to feel complete, to feel okay. It is the constant leaning forward into the future, the belief that happiness is just one more acquisition, one more experience, one more change away. This thirst is the active ingredient that turns the neutral events of life into the poison of suffering. To understand how this thirst traps us, consider the parable of the monkey and the coconut. In a forest, hunters devise a clever trap. They take a coconut, make a small hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through, and place some rice inside. They then tie the coconut to a tree. A monkey, curious and hungry, comes along. It smells the rice, slides its slender hand into the coconut, and grasps a fistful of the delicious grain. But now, its fist, clenched and full, is too large to pull back through the narrow opening. The monkey is trapped. It pulls and shrieks. It thrashes and cries, growing more and more frantic. It can see the hunters approaching. Freedom is just one simple act away. All it has to do is open its hand, let go of the rice, and it can slip its hand out and run to safety. But its craving, its desperate clinging to that fistful of rice, is so strong that it cannot let go. And so, it becomes a prisoner of its own desire. We are this monkey. The world is the coconut, and our endless cravings are the fistful of rice. We are trapped, not by the world, but by our own grasping. The Buddha identified 3 distinct types of this thirst, 3 channels through which this restless energy flows. The first and most obvious is kama-tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for things that delight our 5 senses, the craving for the taste of rich food, the pleasure of intoxicating drink, the sight of a beautiful body, the sound of enchanting music, the feeling of luxurious fabric on our skin. Our entire modern consumer culture is built on fueling kama-tanha. It whispers to us from every advertisement, every social media feed, that satisfaction is just one click, one purchase, one experience away. It promises that the next meal, the next vacation, the next relationship, the next like on our photo will finally fill the void. And so we chase these sensory hits, these fleeting moments of pleasure. But the satisfaction they provide is like drinking salt water. The momentary relief only makes the underlying thirst more intense. The pleasure fades, as all things do, and we are left once again with the familiar feeling of lack, now searching for an even bigger, better hit to quell the emptiness. We become addicts of stimulation, running faster and faster on a hedonic treadmill that leads nowhere. The second type of thirst is more subtle and deeply psychological. It is bhavatanya, the craving for being or becoming. This is not just the craving for things, but the craving for an identity, for a state of existence. It is the deep desire to be something, to be successful, to be respected, to be loved, to be seen as intelligent, to be wealthy, to be powerful, or even to be spiritual or enlightened. It is the driving force behind ambition, the relentless push to construct and maintain a solid, impressive, and permanent self. This is the thirst that fuels our obsession with our careers, our status, our online personas. We curate our lives, building a me that we can present to the world and to ourselves. This craving for being is rooted in our deep fear of insignificance, our terror of annihilation. We want to exist, to matter, to leave a mark, to feel that our personal story has weight and permanence. But this constructed self is an incredibly fragile thing. It needs constant validation, constant defense. We live in fear of criticism, of failure, of not living up to the image we have so carefully crafted. Bhavatana makes us cling desperately to life, to our ideas, to our accomplishments, creating enormous tension and anxiety because we are trying to solidify something that is, by its very nature, a fluid and ever-changing process. The third type of thirst may seem paradoxical, but it is just as powerful. It is vibhavatana, the craving for non-being or annihilation. If bhavatanya is the pull towards, vibhavatanya is the push away. It is the desperate desire to get rid of something unpleasant. It is the craving for a painful feeling to cease, for an anxious thought to disappear, for a difficult situation to end, for an annoying person to go away. When we feel overwhelmed by stress and we think, I just want this all to stop, that is vibhavatana. When we feel shame or self-hatred and wish we could erase a part of our personality, that is vibhavatana. It manifests as aversion, anger, and hatred. We declare war on our own inner experience, trying to annihilate the parts of ourselves or our lives that we find unacceptable. In its most extreme form, it can lead to suicidal thoughts, the ultimate craving to annihilate a painful existence. But on a daily basis, it is the energy that drives us to numb ourselves with distractions, binge-watching television, mindlessly scrolling through our phones, using alcohol or drugs to escape the discomfort of the present moment. It is the desire not to be here, not to feel this, It is another form of resistance, another way of refusing to accept reality as it is. These three thirsts for pleasure, for being, and for non-being are the roots that feed the tree of dukkha. They create a relentless cycle. We feel a fundamental lack, dukkha. This gives rise to a thirst, tanha, to get something or get rid of something. We act on that thirst, and if we succeed, we experience a brief moment of pleasure or relief. But because all things are impermanent, that pleasant state fades, viparinama dukkha. We are then thrown back to the initial state of lack, and the cycle begins anew, often with more desperation than before. This is the hamster wheel in the cage of the self, and what keeps us on the wheel is upadana, which means clinging or attachment. If tanha is the initial reaching for the rice, upadana is the clenched fist that refuses to let go. It is the mental act of holding on tightly to our desires, our views, our identities, and our aversions, cementing them as part of who we are. This diagnosis is incredibly empowering. The Buddha is not saying that pleasure is bad or that life is bad. He is pointing out that our enslavement to our cravings is the problem. The issue is not the meal, but the obsessive thinking about the meal. The issue is not the ambition, but the way our self-worth becomes entirely dependent on the outcome of that ambition. By identifying tanha as the cause of suffering, the Buddha places the solution firmly within our own hands, or more accurately, within our own minds. We are the monkey in the trap. The hunters of old age, sickness, and death are approaching, and we have the key to our own freedom. It is the ability to simply open our hand. This realization, as stark as it is, opens a door to a profound hope. If the cause of our suffering is this insatiable thirst, then the cure must lie in finding a way for that thirst to be quenched, for that fever to break. This leads us to the most hopeful and liberating of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of cessation. Is it truly possible to be free from this relentless cycle? Is there a state beyond craving, a peace that is not dependent on getting what we want or avoiding what we don't? We have walked through the darkness. We have faced the diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive friction of existence, and we have identified its cause, the relentless, burning thirst of tanha. It is easy, at this point, to feel a sense of weight, a resignation to a grim reality. We see the cage, and we feel the bars. We see the monkey with its fist stuck in the coconut, and we recognize ourselves in its frantic struggle. But it is precisely here, in this moment of unflinching honesty, that the path turns toward the light. The Buddha, having laid bare the illness and its cause, now delivers the most profound and hopeful message in all of spiritual inquiry. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. The word Nirodha translates to cessation, extinction, or the ending. It is the simple, earth-shattering statement that there can be an end to our suffering. The fever can break, the thirst can be quenched, the fire can go out. This is not a statement of blind faith, but a logical conclusion. If our suffering is caused by specific conditions, then when those conditions are removed, the suffering must cease. The cage door is not locked. Freedom is possible. This state of cessation, of ultimate peace, is often known by another name, nirvana. For many in the West, this word conjures images of a celestial paradise, a heavenly realm with clouds and eternal bliss, a reward to be attained after death. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that obscures the radical, present moment reality of the teaching. Nirvana is not a place you go to. It is not a destination. It is a state of mind you can realize right here, in this very life. It is a psychological reality, not a geographical one. The Buddha used a powerful and precise metaphor to describe it, the metaphor of an extinguished fire. Our ordinary mind, driven by tanha, is like a house on fire. The flames are the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance. The fire of greed is the hot, grasping flame of desire, always wanting more, never satisfied, consuming everything it touches. The fire of hatred is the acrid, destructive flame of aversion, burning with resentment, anger, and ill will. And the fire of ignorance is the thick, choking smoke of delusion, the confusion that prevents us from seeing reality clearly, the smoke that makes us mistake the prison for a palace. We spend our lives frantically running around inside this burning house, believing that if we can just rearrange the furniture, find a better room, or get a more pleasant view out the window, we will be happy. But we are still in a house that is on fire. Nirodha, or nirvana, is not about redecorating the burning house. It is the act of putting out the fire. What then is extinguished? This is the crucial question. It is not you that is extinguished. It is not your life, your personality, your joy, or your capacity for love that is snuffed out. That is the fear of the ego, the fear of annihilation, vibhava tanha. What is extinguished is the fire of suffering and its causes. It is the flame of craving that is put out. It is the toxic smoke of delusion that clears. It is the searing heat of anger and resentment that cools. When you put out a fire, you are not left with a black hole of nothingness. You are left with peace. You are left with safety. You are left with the space to see clearly, to breathe freely. The absence of the fire is not an empty void. It is the presence of a profound and unshakable tranquility. Imagine you have had a high fever for days. Your body aches. Your mind is delirious. You are tormented by heat and discomfort. Then, one morning, the fever breaks. The heat subsides. The delirium clears. You feel weak, but you also feel an immense sense of relief. The suffering is over. You are not a different person, but you are free from the disease that afflicted you. Nirvana is like that moment of the fever breaking. The delirium of craving ceases. The ache of discontent is gone. What remains is the natural coolness and clarity of a healthy mind. A person who has touched this state, an arhat or a Buddha, is not an emotionless robot. They still experience the world. They feel the warmth of the sun and the cold of the winter wind. They experience pleasant and unpleasant sensations. They see the beauty of a sunset. They may feel sorrow at the loss of a friend. The first arrows of life still arrive, but the second arrows are no longer fired. The events of the world wash over them, but do not stain them. Their inner peace is not contingent on circumstances. It does not depend on getting what they want or avoiding what they don't. It is an inner refuge, a cool cave of peace that they carry within themselves, a peace that the chaos of the world cannot touch. The ancient texts describe this state with metaphors of coolness, stillness, and security. It is called the further shore, a safe harbor from the turbulent ocean of samsara, the cycle of birth and death. It is the unconditioned, a state of being that is no longer subject to the relentless push and pull of cause and effect that governs our ordinary lives. The Buddha once answered a question about nirvana with another powerful image of a flame. A questioner asked, "When a flame is extinguished, where does it go? Does it go north, south, east, or west?" The Buddha replied that the question does not apply. The flame, which was dependent on the conditions of fuel and air, has simply ceased to be when those conditions are removed. It hasn't gone anywhere. In the same way, the self that suffers, which is a process dependent on the fuel of craving and the conditions of clinging, simply ceases its tormented existence when those conditions are removed. What is left is not nothing, but a reality so peaceful and free it is beyond our normal concepts of existence and non-existence. This is the ultimate good news. It is the pivot upon which the entire path turns. It asserts that our human condition, with all its inherent dukkha, is not a life sentence in a maximum security prison. It is a curable condition. There is an alternative to the endless cycle of craving and disappointment. There is a peace that surpasses all understanding, a freedom that is not reliant on anything external. The declaration of Nirodha instills a rational, profound hope. It transforms the spiritual path from a vague quest for self-improvement into a focused, practical project with a clear and attainable goal, the end of suffering. It gives us the courage to continue, the motivation to undertake the work required. For if we know that a state of perfect health is possible, that a complete cure exists, then the logical, burning question that immediately follows is, how? What is the prescription? What is the treatment plan that will lead to the extinguishing of these fires? If there is a safe shore, what is the boat that will take us there? This essential question of how leads us directly to the fourth and final noble truth, the practical and comprehensive guide to liberation known as the Noble Eightfold Path. We have arrived at a pivotal moment in our journey. We have seen the landscape of our dis-ease, dukkha. We have pinpointed its root cause, the insatiable thirst of tanha, and we have been given the profound hope that a cessation of this suffering, nirodha, is possible. A diagnosis has been made, the cause identified, and a cure has been promised. Now, we arrive at the fourth and final noble truth, the one that shifts from diagnosis to treatment, from understanding the problem to engaging in the solution. This is the truth of the path, or Magga. This is the Buddha's prescription, the detailed, practical, and comprehensive map that leads from the shores of suffering to the harbor of peace. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we walk this path, we must understand its nature. The name itself, the Eightfold Path, can be misleading. It may sound like a linear sequence of 8 steps, where one must be perfected before moving to the next, like climbing a ladder. This is not the case. It is far more organic, more holistic. Imagine not a ladder, but the 8 spokes of a great wheel. Each spoke is essential. If one is weak or missing, the wheel is unbalanced and cannot turn smoothly. All 8 spokes must be present and work together, supporting each other to carry us forward on our journey. Or think of it as 8 strong threads, each one somewhat fragile on its own, but when woven together, they create an unbreakable rope that can pull us out of the deepest abyss. Progress in one area supports and deepens our capacity in all the others. This is a path of integrated, whole-life transformation. The foundation of this entire path is the principle of the middle way. The Buddha did not arrive at these teachings through abstract theory, but through years of intense personal experimentation. He had lived at both extremes of human experience. As a young prince, he lived a life of ultimate sensual indulgence, shielded from all unpleasantness, with every desire catered to. He had access to every pleasure imaginable, yet he found this life to be hollow, superficial, and ultimately unsatisfying. It was a distraction, not a solution. So, he left the palace and plunged into the opposite extreme. He became a wandering ascetic, practicing the most severe forms of self-mortification. He starved his body until his ribs showed like a picket fence. He held his breath until he felt his head would explode. He slept on beds of thorns. He pushed his body and mind to the absolute brink of annihilation, believing that by punishing the body, he could liberate the spirit. But this extreme also failed. It only weakened his body and clouded his mind, bringing him no closer to wisdom. It was after rejecting both of these dead ends, the path of indulgence and the path of self-torture, that he discovered the middle way. The story is told of a monk named Sona, who was practicing with such ferocious, misguided effort that his feet were cracked and bleeding from endless walking meditation. Yet he felt he was making no progress. The Buddha, knowing his state of mind, went to him and asked, "Sona, before you became a monk, is it not true that you were a skilled musician, a master of the lute?" Sona admitted this was true. The Buddha then asked, "And what happens if you tune the strings of your lute too tightly?" Sona replied, "Master, if the strings are too tight, they will snap." "And what happens," the Buddha continued, "if you tune them too loosely?" "If they are too loose," Sona said, "they will not make a sound." "That is it, Sona," the Buddha concluded. So it is with spiritual practice. Energy that is stretched too tight leads to restlessness and anxiety. Energy that is too lax leads to laziness and sloth. You must tune the instrument of your body and mind to a pitch that is just right, not too tight and not too loose. This is the spirit of the Eightfold Path. It is a path of balance, of intelligence, of sustainable effort. It is a path for human beings, not for gods or angels. To make this path more understandable, its 8 factors are often grouped into 3 essential categories of training. This is known as the threefold training: the training in higher wisdom, the training in higher ethical conduct, and the training in higher mental discipline. First is the training in wisdom, or prajna. This is the guiding intelligence of the path, the compass that ensures we are heading in the right direction. It consists of the first 2 path factors, right view and right intention. Right view is seeing the world and ourselves as they truly are, understanding the nature of dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path itself. It is the correct map. Right intention is the motivation behind our journey. It is the intention to renounce ill will, to cultivate loving kindness, and to cause no harm. It is the desire to walk the path for the benefit of ourselves and all being. Wisdom is what illuminates the way. Second is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This is the foundation upon which all mental cultivation is built. It is about purifying our external actions, our speech, and our deeds, so that our mind has a peaceful ground upon which to rest. If our daily life is filled with conflict, dishonesty, and harm, it is impossible to find inner peace. Sila consists of 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech means abstaining from lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. Right action means abstaining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And right livelihood means engaging in work that does not cause harm to oneself or others. This is the essential groundwork of cleaning up our lives. Third is the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of the meditative practice, the direct work of training the mind. Having established a foundation of ethical living, we can now turn inward to cultivate the mind's power and clarity. This training includes the final 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right effort is the balanced, intelligent energy we bring to our practice, the energy to prevent unwholesome states from arising and to cultivate wholesome ones. Right mindfulness is the skill of paying attention to the present moment with clarity and non-judgment, the art of being fully present with our experience. And right concentration is the ability to unify the mind, to gather its scattered energies and focus it powerfully, leading to deep states of calm and insight. These 3 trainings, wisdom, conduct, and a disciplined mind work in synergy, a clear mind, samadhi, allows us to see things more wisely, prajna. Seeing things wisely inspires us to act more ethically, sila. Acting ethically creates a life free from remorse, which is the perfect ground for cultivating a clear mind, samadhi. And so the wheel turns, with each factor strengthening and reinforcing all the others, carrying us steadily toward our goal. This is not a path of dogma or blind belief. It is a call to action, an invitation to a lifelong process of cultivation and discovery. It is a blueprint for sanity, a practical guide for transforming every aspect of our lives. So where does one begin such a momentous journey? Where do we place our first footstep? The path begins, as any purposeful journey must, with seeing where you are and where you are going. It begins with the light that illuminates the way. It begins with what the Buddha called right view. We stand at the trailhead. Before us lies the noble eightfold path, the great journey from suffering to peace. And like any traveler about to embark on a momentous expedition, the first and most essential piece of equipment we need is an accurate map. We need to know the terrain, the nature of the landscape we are traversing. Without a clear view, we will wander in circles, mistaking dead ends for highways and mirages for oases. This is why the very first factor on the path, the one that illuminates all the others, is right view, or in Pali, Sama Ditti. It is the headlight on the car, the compass in the hand, the clarifying lens that allows us to see things not as we wish they were, or as we fear they are, or as we have been told they are, but simply as they are. It is crucial to understand that right view is not a command to believe in a dogma. It is not a set of articles of faith that one must accept without question. In the Buddhist tradition, blind faith is seen as a hindrance, not a virtue. Right view is a perspective, a working hypothesis about the nature of reality that we are invited to test against our own direct experience. It is less about having the right answers and more about asking the right questions. The Buddha was not interested in followers who would simply parrot his words. He was interested in creating explorers of consciousness who could see for themselves what he had seen. Right view, then, is the process of correcting a profoundly distorted vision that we all share, a fundamental misperception of reality that is the very root of the thirst, the tanha, that causes our suffering. What is this distorted vision? It is the ingrained, almost unconscious belief that things are permanent, that they can bring us lasting happiness, and that at the center of our experience is a solid, stable, independent self. Right view systematically dismantles these illusions by inviting us to look deeply at three fundamental characteristics of all conditioned existence. These are known as the three marks of existence, or the tilakkhana. They are impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta. To cultivate right view is to learn to see these three marks in every aspect of our lives. The first mark is anicca, or impermanence. On one level, this is obvious. We see the seasons change, we watch night turn to day, we see our own bodies age in the mirror, we see empires rise and fall, mountains erode, and coastlines shift. This is gross, observable impermanence. We intellectually accept it, yet on a deeper, emotional level, we live in a state of constant rebellion against it. We build our lives as if they were made of stone, when in fact, they are made of sand. We cling to youth, to relationships, to moments of pleasure, to states of success, as if we could nail them down and make them stay. This struggle against the fundamental flow of the universe is a primary source of our anxiety. It is like trying to build a dam in the middle of a powerful river with our bare hands. The river will always win. The effort is exhausting and doomed to fail. But anicca goes much deeper than these obvious changes. The Buddha's insight points to a radical, moment-to-moment impermanence. Everything you experience, inside and out, is in a state of constant flux. The body you believe is so solid is, in reality, a dynamic process. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced in this very moment. The breath you are now inhaling is different from the one that will follow. Your thoughts are the most ephemeral of all phenomena, arising in the mind and vanishing in an instant, like lightning in a summer sky. Your emotions, which can feel so solid and all-consuming, are like weather patterns, a storm of anger or a fog of sadness. that inevitably pass and give way to something else. The world is not a collection of nouns, of fixed things. It is a collection of verbs, of processes, of events. It is not a place. It is a shimmering, vibrating, unending dance of arising and passing away. To see Anika is to see this dance in every moment. It is to understand that you can never step in the same river twice, because both you and the river are constantly changing. To accept this flow is to find a profound freedom. When we stop trying to grasp and hold onto the water of life, we can learn to swim in it. We can appreciate the beauty of the wave without the futile and painful desire to possess it. The second mark of existence is one we have already met: dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. Here, we see it in a new light. It is not just the first noble truth, but a fundamental characteristic of any experience we cling to within the conditioned world. Dukkha arises as the inevitable result of the first mark, anicca. Because all things are impermanent, any attempt to find lasting, ultimate happiness in them is destined to lead to disappointment. It is a simple, logical equation. We crave permanence in a world that is defined by impermanence. The friction between that craving and that reality is dukkha. The beautiful vacation ends, the delicious meal is finished, the joyful feeling subsides. This is the suffering of change, viparinama dukkha, and it is a direct consequence of anicca. Our refusal to accept the truth of impermanence turns potentially joyful experiences into sources of anxiety and future pain. We are haunted by the ghost of their departure even as we experience them. Dukkha is the shadow cast by anicca whenever we try to cling. The third mark of existence is the most profound, the most challenging to our ordinary way of thinking, and the most liberating. It is anatta, or not self. Just as we instinctively believe things are permanent, we have an even deeper conviction that at the center of our universe, there is a me, a thinker of the thoughts, a feeler of the feelings, a permanent, unchanging soul or ego that is the master of this psychophysical experience. The Buddha subjected this core belief to a relentless and brilliant analysis, and he found that, upon close inspection, this solid, independent self simply cannot be found. There is a famous story that beautifully illustrates this. A great king named Milinda, a man of sharp intellect, came to challenge a Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king arrived in a magnificent chariot and asked the sage his name. Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, but this is just a designation, a name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king, intrigued, began to question him. "If there is no person," the king asked, gesturing to the chariot, "then what is this chariot? Is the pole the chariot?" "No, your majesty," said Nagasena. "Is the axle the chariot? Number, are the wheels, or the frame, or the reins the chariot?" "Number." Then the king pressed, "Is it all of these parts together that are the chariot?" "No, your majesty." "Is it something separate from all of these parts?" "Number." The king was triumphant. "Then, venerable sir, you are speaking a falsehood. There is no chariot." Nagasena remained calm. He turned the question back on the king. "Your majesty, you said you came here in a chariot, but as we have seen, the pole is not the chariot, the axle is not the chariot, the wheels are not the chariot. Chariot is simply a convenient name, a label we give to a collection of parts, assembled in a particular way. It has no independent, essential existence of its own." He then applied the same logic to himself. "Nagasena," he said, "is just a conventional term for this collection of a body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. But if you look for a permanent Nagasena within these components, you will not find one." To facilitate this investigation, The Buddha analyzed the so-called person into 5 components, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. Cultivating right view of anatta involves looking at each of these components and asking, is this me? Is this mine? Am I this? The first aggregate is form, the physical body. Is this body me? It seems so at first, but this body came from our parents. It is sustained by the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe. It ages, it gets sick, it gets injured, all outside of our ultimate command. It will one day die and decompose back into the elements. How can we say that this ever-changing collection of borrowed material is a permanent, independent self? It is a process, not a thing. The second aggregate is sensation or feeling. These are the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. A pleasant taste, a harsh sound, a neutral feeling in our hands. Are these feelings me? They are fleeting, dependent entirely on external contact. They arise and vanish in a flash. To build an identity on something so fickle and transient is to build a house on shifting sands. The third aggregate is perception. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels experience. It sees a shape and color and labels it tree. It hears a sound and labels it car. Is this labeling process me? It is conditioned by our language, our culture, our past experiences. The label is not the thing itself. This is a mental function, a useful tool, but not a self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all our volitional activities, our thoughts, our habits, our moods, our opinions, our prejudices, our intentions. This aggregate often feels the most like us. It is the storyteller, the planner, the worrier, the inner critic. But when we look closely, we see that these, too, are conditioned phenomena. Our habits are learned. Our opinions are borrowed. Our thoughts arise unbidden, often from sources we do not understand. They are not solid things, but fleeting events in the mind. They are not a self. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is not some grand, all-encompassing awareness, but the simple, moment-to-moment function of knowing. There is eye consciousness, which knows sights, ear consciousness, which knows sounds, mind consciousness, which knows thoughts. Is this consciousness me? It is entirely dependent on an object and a sense organ. Without an eye and a visible form, there can be no eye consciousness. It arises and passes away with each moment of contact. It is not a continuous, singular entity, but a flickering process of knowing. When we investigate these 5 aspects of our experience and fail to find a permanent, independent self in any of them, or in the collection of them, a profound shift happens. The liberating insight of anatta is not a denial of our existence. It is a denial of a mistaken idea of our existence. The implication is revolutionary. If there is no solid, fixed self to protect and promote, then what happens to our suffering? Who is it that is being insulted? Whose pride is wounded? Who is it that is failing? Who is it that is so terrified of not getting what they want? The entire edifice of the ego, with its fear, its greed, its jealousy, its pride, and its anger, is built on the foundation of a me that needs to be defended. When right view reveals that this foundation is an illusion, the entire structure begins to crumble. We realize we are not the isolated, separate entity we thought we were. We are a process, interwoven with the entire universe, a flowing river of physical and mental phenomena. To cultivate right view is to patiently, persistently learn to see these 3 marks, anicca, dukkha, and anattain, all our experience. It is to see impermanence in every breath, unsatisfactoriness in all clinging, and the impersonality of not-self in every thought and feeling. This is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a fundamental reorientation of our entire being. And when our view of the world begins to change so profoundly, when our map is finally corrected, it has an immediate and powerful effect on our heart. A correct view of reality naturally gives rise to a correct motivation for living within it. And this leads us directly to the second factor of the path, the cultivation of right intention. If right view provides us with a clear and accurate map of reality, right intention is the act of setting the compass of our heart to align with that map. It is the second factor of the path, known in Pali as Sama Sankappa, and it represents the crucial pivot from seeing to doing, from wisdom to will. It is not enough to intellectually understand that life is impermanent and selfless. We must consciously choose to orient our inner world, our thoughts and motivations, in a way that reflects this understanding. Right intention is the rudder of the ship. While right view shows us the destination of the further shore, right intention is what steers us away from the rocks of greed and hatred and keeps us aimed squarely toward that peaceful harbor. The Buddha taught that our mind is the forerunner of all things. Every action we take, every word we speak, is first born as a thought, an intention. In the mind, our life, our character, and the world we experience are the cumulative result of these intentions. Imagine your mind is a garden. For most of our lives, we allow this garden to grow wild. We are not conscious of what we are planting. Seeds of anger, jealousy, greed, and fear are blown in by the winds of culture and conditioning, and we allow them to take root and grow into thorny weeds that choke the life out of everything else. The practice of right intention is the act of becoming a conscious gardener of the mind. It is the deliberate, patient work of identifying the weeds and gently removing them, and then choosing to cultivate beautiful, nourishing plants in their place. It is about taking responsibility for the quality of our inner landscape, knowing that what grows inside will inevitably manifest outside. There is a timeless story told in many cultures that captures the essence of this practice. An elder is teaching a child about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he says. "It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person, too." The child thinks for a minute and then asks the elder, "Which wolf will win?" The old man simply replies, "The one you feed." Right intention is the conscious act of choosing which wolf to feed, moment by moment, thought by thought. The Buddha distilled this choice into 3 specific categories, 3 pairs of wholesome and unwholesome intentions. The first component of right intention is the intention of renunciation, which stands in direct opposition to the intention of sensual desire. The word renunciation can sound severe, evoking images of harsh self-denial, but its true meaning is closer to letting go or yielding. It is not about punishing ourselves, but about liberating ourselves. The intention of sensual desire is the default setting for the untrained mind. It is the voice of the hungry ghost, constantly whispering that our happiness depends on acquiring something external, a new possession, a better relationship, more praise, a more pleasurable experience. It is the engine of tanha, keeping us on the treadmill of wanting and getting, a cycle that we now know leads only to dukkha. The intention of renunciation, by contrast, is a radical shift in strategy. It is the wisdom to recognize that true happiness comes not from adding more, but from wanting less. It is the intention to find peace and contentment within, rather than seeking it in the fleeting and unreliable world of the senses. It is choosing the enduring joy of simplicity over the momentary thrill of complexity. This doesn't mean we cannot enjoy a beautiful sunset or a good meal. It means our peace of mind is no longer dependent on them. It is the act of unclenching the fist, of letting go of the fistful of rice that keeps us trapped, and discovering the freedom that was there all along. It is feeding the wolf of contentment, not the wolf of craving. The second component of right intention is the intention of goodwill or loving kindness, which stands opposite the intention of ill will. The mind of ill will is a toxic and painful place to live. It is the mind that rehearses old grievances, nurtures resentment, wishes harm upon others, and marinates in anger. Ill will is a poison we drink ourselves, hoping the other person will die. It is a fire that burns the one who holds it. The intention of goodwill, or metta, is the direct antidote. It is the deliberate cultivation of a warm, friendly, and benevolent attitude towards all of existence. It is the conscious choice to feed the wolf of kindness. This is not a passive sentimentality. It is an active mental practice. It begins with ourselves, intending for our own well-being, wishing, may I be peaceful, may I be happy, may I be safe. We learn to be a friend to ourselves first. From there, we radiate this intention outwards, like ripples in a pond, to our loved ones, to our friends, to neutral people, and, most challengingly, even to those who have harmed us. We consciously replace the tight, bitter thoughts of aversion with the spacious, warm thoughts of goodwill. We understand that the actions of others come from their own suffering and confusion. By wishing them well, we are not condoning their actions. We are simply refusing to add our own poison to the world. We are choosing to protect our own heart, to keep our own garden free from the thorns of hatred. The third and final component is the intention of harmlessness or compassion, which is the opposite of the intention of cruelty or harmfulness. The intention of harmfulness arises from a mind that sees others as separate, as objects to be used, or as obstacles to be overcome. It can be overtly cruel, or it can manifest as a cold indifference to the suffering of others. The intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa, is the resolution to abstain from causing harm in thought, word, or deed to any living being. It is a profound respect for life. This intention is the foundation of all ethical conduct. When this intention of harmlessness encounters a being who is already suffering, it transforms into its active counterpart, compassion or karuna. Compassion is not pity. Pity looks down from above. Compassion meets the other at eye level. It is the heart's trembling in the face of suffering, coupled with the sincere wish for that suffering to end. It arises from the wisdom of anatta, the understanding that there is no true separation between me and you. Your suffering is, in a very real way, my suffering. The intention of harmlessness and compassion extends beyond just human beings. It includes animals, plants, and the planet itself. It is a recognition of our deep interconnectedness and a commitment to walking through the world with a gentle step, seeking to be a source of safety and peace, not a source of fear and pain. It is the ultimate expression of feeding the good wolf, the wolf of universal kinship. These three renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness are the seeds we choose to plant in the garden of our mind. The work of right intention is a moment-to-moment practice. In any situation, we can pause and ask ourselves, what is the intention behind this thought? Is it coming from a place of craving or a place of letting go? Is it rooted in ill will or in goodwill? Is it aimed at harm or at harmlessness? By asking these questions, we bring the light of awareness to the unconscious drivers of our behavior. We begin to consciously take the rudder of our own mind, This is not about becoming perfect overnight. It is about consistently, patiently, and kindly choosing to feed the better wolf. We will fail. We will find weeds of anger and greed sprouting again and again, but we simply notice them without judgment and gently pull them out, planting a seed of kindness in their place. Over time, the entire landscape of the mind begins to change. The soil becomes richer, the air clearer, and the thorny weeds of suffering are gradually replaced by the beautiful blossoms of peace, clarity, and compassion. And when the inner garden has been cultivated with such care, it is only natural that its fragrance will begin to waft out into the world. The first and most immediate way our purified intentions find expression is through the words we use. The inner shift of right intention paves the way for the outer practice of right speech. The garden of the mind, cultivated with the care of right intention, does not remain a secret. Its nature is revealed in the world, and its first and most constant expression is through the words we speak. Speech is the bridge between our inner reality and the outer world. It is a formidable power. With words, we can build trust, inspire hope, and heal deep wounds. With words, we can also destroy reputations, incite hatred, and inflict pain that lasts a lifetime. Every word we utter is a form of action, a karmic seed that we plant in the world and in our own consciousness. The practice of right speech, or samavaka, is the third factor of the Eightfold Path, and it calls us to wield this power with the precision of a surgeon, the kindness of a friend, and the wisdom of a sage. It is the art of transforming our communication from a source of conflict and misunderstanding into a practice of mindfulness and compassion. There is an old story of a man who, in a moment of jealousy, spread a malicious rumor about a wise elder in his village. As time went on, the man was consumed by guilt. He went to the elder to confess and ask for forgiveness. "I will forgive you," the elder said, "but first, you must do one thing. Take a pillow full of feathers, go to the center of the village, cut it open, and let the wind scatter the feathers." The man did as he was told. He then returned to the elder and said, "I have done it. Am I now forgiven?" The elder looked at him and said, "Almost. Now you have one final task. Go and gather every single feather and put it back in the pillow." The man was aghast. "But that's impossible. The wind has carried them everywhere. I can never get them all back." The elder nodded slowly. "So it is with your words. Once spoken, they can never be fully retrieved. They are carried on the winds to places you will never know, and the damage they do can never be completely undone." This story is a sobering reminder of the weight and permanence of our speech. Right speech asks us to hold this responsibility in our hearts before we open our mouths. The practice is traditionally broken down into 4 clear and practical guidelines. The first guideline is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic, this means not telling lies. A life built on deception, even small white lies, becomes a tangled and stressful prison. We must constantly remember which story we told to whom, living in fear of being exposed. This erodes our own integrity and destroys the trust that is the bedrock of all healthy relationships. To commit to truthful speech is to simplify our lives profoundly. It is to live with a clear conscience and a peaceful heart. However, this is not a license for brutal, tactless honesty. The truth should always be wielded with kindness. Before speaking, we can ask ourselves not only, is it true, but also, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? Sometimes the truest and kindest act is to remain silent. Speaking the truth, then, is a practice of integrity, but it must be guided by the compassionate intention to cause no harm. The second guideline is to abstain from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the speech that poisons human connection. It includes gossip, backbiting, and saying things to turn one person against another. We often engage in this kind of speech out of our own insecurity. By speaking ill of another, we create a temporary, false sense of superiority or a feeling of belonging with those who share in the gossip. But it is a toxic bond built on the suffering of another. It creates factions, fuels mistrust, and destroys communities. The practice of right speech calls us to do the opposite, to speak in ways that promote harmony and reconciliation. When we hear gossip, we let it stop with us. We refuse to be a carrier of tales. Instead, we can make an effort to speak of the good qualities we see in others. If we must speak of a conflict, we do so with the intention of building bridges and fostering understanding, not of fanning the flames of division. We become agents of unity, not discord. The third guideline is to abstain from harsh or abusive speech. These are words spoken in anger, intended to wound, dominate, or belittle. It includes obvious forms like yelling, insulting, and name-calling, but also more subtle forms like cutting sarcasm, mockery, and passive-aggressive remarks. Harsh speech is a direct verbal assault, a second arrow fired with the clear intention of causing pain. It escalates conflict, creates fear, and leaves deep emotional scars. Right speech invites us to cultivate the opposite, a habit of gentleness. It is the choice to speak to others with courtesy and respect, even when we disagree. It is paying attention to our tone of voice, ensuring it is calm and kind. The Buddha described this as speech that is pleasing to the ear and endearing. This doesn't mean our words lack strength or clarity. It means that strength is tempered with a fundamental gentleness, a recognition of the shared humanity and vulnerability of the person we are speaking to. We learn that we can be firm without being furious, clear without being cruel. The fourth and final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This may seem less serious than lying or yelling, but the Buddha included it because he understood the preciousness of our mental energy. Idle chatter is speech that is aimless and unproductive. It is pointless gossip, complaining, and speaking simply to fill the silence. It is the verbal equivalent of mental clutter. It scatters our focus, drains our energy, and keeps the mind in a state of superficial agitation. Right speech, in contrast, is purposeful. It is speech that is beneficial, relevant, and timely. This requires us to develop a greater awareness of not just what we say, but why we are saying it. Am I speaking to be helpful, to share something meaningful, to express genuine connection? Or am I just speaking out of nervousness, boredom, or a desire to be the center of attention? This fourth guideline points to a deeper and often overlooked aspect of right speech, the power of noble silence. In a world that is saturated with noise, we often forget that silence is not an empty void to be feared, but a rich and restorative space. It is in silence that we can truly listen. It is in silence that our own agitated minds can settle. It is in silence that we can connect with a deeper wisdom. Learning to be comfortable with silence, both in our own company and with others, is a powerful practice. We realize that we don't need to comment on everything. Often, the most eloquent, compassionate, and wise response is no response at all. And part of this is cultivating the skill of deep listening. True communication is not just about eloquently expressing our own views. It is about generously receiving the views of another. To listen with our full attention, without judging or formulating our own rebuttal, is one of the greatest gifts we can offer. It makes the other person feel seen, heard, and valued. It is the receptive side of right speech. To practice right speech is to bring mindfulness to every word that leaves our lips. It is to transform our communication from an unconscious habit into a conscious act of healing and connection. We learn to use our words as tools to build a more peaceful world, starting with the space between ourselves and the person in front of us. As our speech becomes more aligned with our purified intentions, the path naturally calls us to look at the next level of our outward expression. For even louder than our words are the actions of our body, and so, the path leads us from right speech to the practice of right action. The path of transformation flows from the inside out. We began by correcting our view and clarifying our intention. From this inner alignment, we learn to purify our speech, turning our words into instruments of peace. Now, the path calls us to embody this wisdom in the most direct and tangible way possible, through the actions of our body. This is right action, or Sama Kamanta, the fourth factor of the path. It is the practice of making our physical presence in the world a source of security, trust, and well-being for all those we encounter. If our mind is the garden and our words are the fragrance, then our actions are the fruit. Right action ensures that the fruit we offer the world is wholesome, nourishing, and free from poison. It is where our practice becomes visible, where our inner convictions are translated into a living, breathing reality. The guiding star for all right action is the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. It is the deep and unwavering commitment to cause no harm and, whenever possible, to protect and cherish life. Perhaps no story illustrates the transformative power of this principle more dramatically than that of Angulimala. Angulimala was a terrifying bandit who stalked the forests of ancient India. His name meant garland of fingers, for he had sworn to kill 1,000 people, and he wore a gruesome necklace made from the fingers of his victims. He was the embodiment of terror, of wrong action in its most extreme form. Travelers, villagers, and even kings were afraid of him. One day, the Buddha, knowing that Angulimala was searching for his final victim, calmly and deliberately walked into that same forest. Angulimala saw him and was delighted. He began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up. Exasperated, he yelled, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, still walking, turned and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." Angulimala was perplexed. "What do you mean?" The Buddha replied, "I have stopped forever from causing harm to any living being. You have not." In that moment, faced with the Buddha's utter fearlessness and profound compassion, the entire edifice of Angulimala's rage and violence collapsed. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. He went on to become a devoted practitioner, an arhat, completely purified of his past, a living testament that no one is beyond the reach of transformation, and that a lifetime of wrong action can be abandoned in a single moment of right understanding. This story reveals the heart of right action, which is traditionally defined by 3 core precepts. The first is to abstain from taking life. This is Angulimala's great stopping. On its most fundamental level, it is a commitment not to kill other human beings, but its spirit extends much further. It is the cultivation of a deep reverence for all life, recognizing that every being, from the smallest insect to the largest whale, shares the same fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This principle invites us to mindfully examine how our choices impact other living creatures. It may lead us to consider our diet, to reduce or eliminate our consumption of meat, not as a rigid rule, but as a personal expression of compassion. It extends to our relationship with the environment, understanding that by destroying ecosystems, we are destroying the homes and lives of countless beings. To practice this aspect of right action is to move through the world not as a conqueror, but as a guardian, a protector of the intricate web of life of which we are a part. The second principle of right action is to abstain from taking what is not given. In short, this means not stealing. This goes far beyond simply not robbing a bank or shoplifting. In our complex modern world, stealing can take many subtle forms. It can mean stealing time from an employer by not working when we are on the clock. It can mean downloading pirated movies or software, taking the creative work of others without respecting their right to be compensated. It can mean plagiarizing ideas or taking credit for someone else's work. At its core, this principle is about respecting the property, the efforts, and the contributions of others. But right action is not just a list of prohibition. The active counterpart to not stealing is the joyful practice of generosity, or dana. Generosity is the direct antidote to the poison of greed and the fear of scarcity. It is the practice of giving freely, without expecting anything in return. We can be generous with our material resources, but we can also be generous with our time, our energy, our kind attention, and our wisdom. To practice generosity is to delight in the well-being of others. It breaks the chains of attachment and the self-centered view of what's in it for me. It opens the heart and reveals the simple, profound truth that the more we give, the richer we become. The third principle of right action is to abstain from sexual misconduct. In a world often confused about sexuality, this principle brings the light of mindfulness and non-harming into our most intimate relationships. It is not a puritanical rejection of sexuality, but a call for it to be expressed with profound respect, honesty, and care. At its most basic, it means not engaging in sexual acts that cause harm to others, such as adultery, which breaks trust and devastates families, or any form of sexual assault or exploitation. But its modern application calls for a deeper inquiry. It means ensuring that all sexual engagement is based on mutual respect and enthusiastic consent. It means being honest with our partners, not using deception or manipulation for our own gratification. It is about seeing our partners not as objects for our desire, but as whole, complex human beings with their own feelings, vulnerabilities, and dignity. It's about ensuring that our sexual energy is an expression of connection, affection, and kindness, rather than a mindless expression of craving that can leave emotional wreckage in its wake. Together, these three principles: protecting life, practicing generosity, and respecting others in our relationships form the foundation of an ethical and blameless life. By committing to them, we systematically remove the external causes of conflict, guilt, and remorse. A person who lives this way has nothing to hide and no one to fear. Their conscience is clear. This outer peace becomes the stable, solid ground upon which the deeper, inner work of meditation can flourish. It is difficult to calm the mind when one's life is in a state of ethical chaos. Right action cleans up our lives, allowing for the possibility of profound inner silence. As we integrate these principles into our personal lives, the path naturally prompts us to look at the area where we spend the majority of our waking hours, the place where our actions have a significant impact on the world, our work. And so, our journey leads us from the personal ethics of right action to the professional ethics of right livelihood. Having harmonized our personal conduct through right action, the path now extends into the domain where our actions have their most sustained and far-reaching impact: our work. For most of us, our livelihood consumes the largest portion of our waking hours. It is the primary way we interact with society, the main vehicle through which our energy and talent flow out into the world. The fifth factor of the path, right livelihood or sama ajiva, insists that this enormous part of our lives cannot be compartmentalized or excluded from our spiritual practice. It is the art and challenge of earning a living in a way that is honorable, ethical, and consistent with the core principle of non-harming. It is the integration of our spiritual values into our professional lives, ensuring that the way we sustain our body does not poison our mind or harm the world. The ideal of a life where commerce and compassion coexist beautifully is exemplified in the story of Anathapindika, one of the Buddha's most devoted lay disciples. Anathapindika was an immensely wealthy merchant, a master of business and finance in his time. Yet his name, given to him by the people, meant feeder of the destitute, which reveals the heart of his practice. He conducted his business with scrupulous honesty and integrity. He was known for treating his employees with fairness and respect, viewing them as partners in his success. His great wealth, earned through ethical means, was not a source of attachment or arrogance. Instead, he saw it as a tool for creating immense good in the world. He famously purchased a beautiful park for the Buddha and his community of monks and nuns, creating the Jetavana Monastery, one of the most important centers of learning and practice in the history of Buddhism. Anathapindika's life demonstrates a profound truth. Right livelihood is not about rejecting the world of commerce, but about engaging with it from a place of wisdom and compassion. It shows that what matters is not the amount of wealth we accumulate, but the ethical framework through which we earn it and the selfless purpose to which we apply it. The traditional teachings on right livelihood outline two key aspects: the what and the how. The what refers to the types of professions one should avoid. The Buddha identified 5 specific kinds of business that are inherently harmful and thus constitute wrong livelihood. First is dealing in weapons, as this trade directly profits from violence, conflict, and the potential for death. Second is dealing in living beings, which includes human trafficking and slavery, but also raising animals for slaughter, as it involves profiting from the bondage and killing of sentient beings. Third is working in meat production, which involves the direct act of taking life. Fourth is dealing in poisons, meaning substances specifically designed to harm or kill. And fifth is dealing in intoxicants, such as alcohol or recreational drugs, which profits from selling substances that cloud the mind, erode self-control, and lead to heedlessness, which is the root of much suffering. These 5 are to be avoided because they are fundamentally incompatible with the intention of harmlessness. They directly cause or facilitate harm to oneself or others. For most people in the modern world, however, the more relevant and challenging aspect of right livelihood is the how. Many of us do not work in these prohibited fields, but any profession can be practiced with either right or wrong intention. Right livelihood is less about having a specific Buddhist job title and more about bringing integrity, honesty, and kindness to whatever work we do. This means, first and foremost, conducting our business with unwavering honesty. We do not cheat our customers, deceive our clients, or mislead our employers. We provide fair value for fair pay. Our advertising is truthful. Our products are what we claim they are. This commitment to transparency simplifies our lives and builds a reputation of trust, which is the most valuable currency of all. Furthermore, we practice right livelihood by treating everyone in our professional sphere with respect. We foster a work environment that is free from the poisons of gossip, backstabbing, and abusive behavior. We treat our colleagues, subordinates, and superiors as fellow human beings, not just as cogs in a machine or rungs on a ladder. We avoid exploiting others, which means paying fair wages, ensuring safe working conditions, and not taking advantage of another's vulnerability for our own gain. This principle of non-exploitation also extends to the planet. A business that pollutes rivers, destroys forests, or relies on unsustainable practices is causing immense harm, even if its products seem benign. Right livelihood encourages us to consider the entire chain of consequences of our work, to be mindful of its impact on the intricate web of life. Perhaps the most profound shift in practicing right livelihood is moving from a mindset of accumulation to one of contribution. The conventional view of work is that it is primarily a means to an end, to earn money, to gain status, to accumulate possessions. This mindset keeps us on the treadmill of Tanha, forever seeking more. Right livelihood invites us to reframe the purpose of our work. We can ask ourselves, how can my work, whatever it is, be a form of service? How can it alleviate suffering or bring benefit to others? A doctor can see their work not just as a career, but as a direct practice of compassion. A teacher can see their work as cultivating wisdom in future generations. An artist can see their work as bringing beauty and inspiration into the world. Even a janitor can practice right livelihood by reframing their work, not as just cleaning floors, but as creating a clean, safe, and pleasant environment for people to live and work in. When we see our work as a form of contribution, it ceases to be a burden and becomes a meaningful part of our path. The paycheck becomes a byproduct of our service, not the sole purpose of our efforts. The path of sila, of ethical conduct, is now complete. We have explored the purification of our speech, our physical actions, and now our professional lives. By committing to right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we create a life of profound integrity. We build an external environment for ourselves that is peaceful, harmonious, and free from remorse. We have ceased to be a source of harm in the world and have begun to be a source of good. This blamelessness and external peace creates the perfect foundation for the next stage of the journey. With the outer world in order, we can now turn the full force of our attention inward to the direct and focused training of the mind itself. This deeper work requires immense energy, patience, and skillful application. And so, having built a stable base, we are now ready to take up the tools of mental discipline, beginning with the crucial factor of right effort. Having established a life of ethical integrity through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we have built a stable foundation. We have calmed the external chaos, creating a life of blamelessness and peace. This outer tranquility is not the end of the path, but rather the necessary ground upon which the deeper, inner work can begin. We now turn away from the world of outward behavior and venture into the vast, intricate territory of the mind itself. This marks our entry into the final section of the Eightfold Path, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the direct cultivation of the mind's potential for clarity, calm, and insight. And this profound inner work requires a special kind of fuel, a particular quality of energy. This is the sixth factor of the path, right effort, or samavayama. The word effort can conjure images of struggle, of gritting one's teeth, of straining with willpower to achieve a goal. This is not what is meant by right effort. This is not the tense, aggressive energy of the ego trying to force its way to enlightenment. The path is a middle way, and the quality of our energy must also be balanced. We recall the Buddha's advice to the monk Sona: the lute string of our practice must not be too tight, for it will snap and lead to anxiety and burnout. Nor can it be too loose, for it will make no music and lead to laziness and complacency. Right effort is the perfectly tuned string. It is a steady, persistent, and joyful endeavor. It is the energy of the tortoise in the ancient fable, who wins the race not through frantic bursts of speed, but through continuous, unwavering progress. It is the gentle but immense power of a great river flowing inexorably to the sea. It is diligence without tension, persistence without struggle. It is the wise application of our energy toward the project of our own liberation. The Buddha, in his genius for practical instruction, provided a clear and comprehensive job description for this right effort. He broke it down into 4 distinct, yet interconnected, functions. These are often called the 4 great efforts, and they provide a complete framework for becoming a skilled gardener of our own mind. These four functions are: to prevent the arising of unwholesome states that have not yet arisen, to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen, to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen, and to maintain and perfect wholesome states that have already arisen. Let us look at each of these in turn. The first of the four great efforts is to prevent the arising of unwholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the practice of wise prevention, of being a vigilant gatekeeper at the six sense doors of the mind: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind itself. Unwholesome states are the mental weeds that cause suffering. Thoughts of greed, anger, jealousy, ill will, restlessness, and doubt. This first effort is about not needlessly inviting them into our garden. It requires us to become more mindful of what we consume with our senses. We begin to notice that certain inputs reliably trigger certain negative states. For example, we might notice that mindlessly scrolling through a particular social media feed consistently gives rise to feelings of envy and inadequacy. The right effort here is not to summon superhuman willpower to resist envy once it has arisen, but to proactively and wisely choose to limit our exposure to that specific trigger. It is the wisdom to not walk down a dark alley where we know trouble awaits. If certain television shows, movies, or music fill our minds with images of violence and craving, we make the effort to choose media that is calming or uplifting. If certain conversations always devolve into negative gossip or angry political debate, we make the effort to steer the conversation in a more wholesome direction or to politely excuse ourselves. This is not about hiding from the world in a sterile bubble. It is about recognizing that our mental state is deeply conditioned by what we feed it. Just as someone with a food allergy wisely avoids the foods that make them sick, a wise practitioner avoids the sensory inputs that they know will poison their mind. It is an act of profound self-respect and kindness, a proactive guarding of our own inner peace. We learn to become our own best friend, protecting our mind from unnecessary harm. The second great effort is to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts as a gatekeeper, weeds will inevitably sprout in the garden. A thought of anger towards a colleague arises. A wave of craving for something we cannot have washes over us. A fog of despair or laziness descends. The untrained mind either indulges the state, feeding it and letting it grow into a great and thorny bush, or it tries to violently suppress it, pushing it down out of sight where it only gains more power in the darkness. Right effort teaches a third way, a skillful and intelligent approach. It is not about fighting the weed, but about skillfully removing it. The Buddha offered several practical strategies for this. One is to apply an antidote. When a thought of anger or resentment arises, we can intentionally bring to mind a thought of loving kindness or compassion, perhaps by remembering a time that person was kind, or by reflecting on their own suffering. This is like applying a cooling balm to a burn. When a strong desire or lust arises, we can reflect on the impermanence, anicca, of the object of our desire, seeing that it cannot bring lasting happiness. When laziness or sloth takes hold, we can arouse energy by reflecting on the preciousness of this human life and the urgency of our practice. Another powerful method is to simply change the channel of the mind, to deliberately shift our attention to a more neutral or wholesome object, like the physical sensation of our breath. Perhaps the most direct method, developed through mindfulness, is to simply see the unwholesome thought for what it is, just a thought, an impersonal, impermanent event arising in the mind. We see it clearly, without judgment and without getting entangled in its story. We don't feed it with more thought. We don't resist it. We simply let it be. And like a cloud in the sky, it eventually passes on its own. This is the art of letting go, of unclenching the mind. The third great effort is the joyful task of arousing wholesome states that have not yet arisen. It is not enough to simply pull the weeds from our garden. If we do only that, we will be left with an empty patch of dirt where new weeds will quickly grow. We must actively sow the seeds of the beautiful flowers and nourishing plants we wish to cultivate. Wholesome states are the qualities of a liberated mind. Kindness, compassion, generosity, patience, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. This effort is about creating the conditions in our lives for these qualities to blossom. We can do this by consciously choosing to associate with wise and kind friends, Kalyanamita, whose presence inspires the best in us. We can read spiritual texts, listen to Dharma talks, or engage with art that uplifts and opens the heart. We can deliberately practice gratitude, taking time each day to reflect on the good things in our lives, however small. We can undertake acts of generosity, noticing how the act of giving itself gives rise to a feeling of joy. We can set aside time each day for formal meditation, creating a dedicated space for tranquility and concentration to develop. This is the proactive, optimistic side of the practice. We are not just fixing what is broken, we are actively cultivating what is beautiful. We are not just avoiding hell, we are consciously building heaven, right here in our own heart and mind. The fourth and final great effort is to maintain and perfect wholesome states that have already arisen. A seed has been planted, and a small, tender sprout has emerged. Our work is not done. Now we must tend to this delicate plant, watering it, protecting it, and giving it the sunlight it needs to grow strong. When a moment of genuine peace arises during our day, the tendency of the untrained mind is to ignore it and immediately jump to the next worry or plan. This fourth effort teaches us to do the opposite. It encourages us to savor that moment of peace, to notice it fully, to appreciate it, to rest in it, to ask, what conditions allowed this peace to arise? By giving our attention to these wholesome states, we strengthen them. In modern neuroscience terms, we are strengthening the neural pathways for peace, joy, and compassion. If we feel a genuine upwelling of compassion for someone, we don't just let it be a fleeting moment. We dwell in it. We breathe with it. We let it fill our awareness. If during meditation we find a state of clear, calm focus, we learn to gently sustain it without grasping at it too tightly, but with a light and loving attention. This practice of nurturing the good is what allows these fleeting states to grow into lasting traits. A momentary feeling of kindness, properly tended, can grow into a deep and abiding character of benevolence. A fleeting moment of clarity can, with patient cultivation, mature into the unshakable wisdom of enlightenment. These four great efforts form a complete and dynamic system for the conscious evolution of the mind. They are the essential work of the path. They are how we move from being a passive victim of our mental habits to the empowered and skillful creator of our inner world. But one can immediately see that, to perform any of these four tasks though, know what to prevent, what to abandon, what to arouse, and what to maintain requires one indispensable faculty. We must first be able to see what is actually happening in the garden of our mind from moment to moment. We need a clear, bright, non-judgmental awareness. This core skill, this lamp in the darkness that makes all right effort possible, is the seventh factor of the path. It is the heart of the Buddha's teaching and the key to all mental discipline. It is the practice of right mindfulness. We have arrived at the very heart of the path, the central pillar upon which all other factors are supported. We have cultivated right effort, learning to skillfully and gently guide our minds, But to be a skillful gardener, we must first be able to see the garden clearly. We need a light that can illuminate the inner landscape, revealing the weeds of unwholesome states and the blossoms of wholesome ones. This light, this indispensable faculty of clear-seeing awareness, is the seventh factor of the path. Right mindfulness, or samasati. It is the art and practice of being fully present for our own lives, of waking up from the dream of past regrets and future anxieties, and arriving in the vivid, immediate reality of the present moment. In the modern world, the word mindfulness has become ubiquitous, and with its popularity have come many misunderstandings. It is crucial, therefore, to be clear about what right mindfulness is not. It is not an attempt to empty the mind or to stop thinking. The mind produces thoughts as the salivary glands produce saliva. Trying to stop them is a futile and frustrating struggle. Mindfulness is not about getting rid of thoughts, but about changing our relationship to them. It is also not simply a relaxation technique. While a state of calm is often a beautiful byproduct of the practice, the primary goal is not relaxation but clarity. Mindfulness can, at times, bring us face to face with uncomfortable truths and difficult emotions. Its purpose is to see reality, not just to feel good, nor is it a state of being spaced out or disconnected. On the contrary, it is a state of being radically connected to the raw data of the present moment. And finally, the right mindfulness implies that this is not a cold, detached, clinical observation. It is an awareness that is infused with the warmth of the path, with the kindness and gentleness of a mind committed to non-harming. So, what is it? The most classic definition is beautifully simple. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let's unpack this. Paying attention on purpose means it is an intentional act. We are consciously choosing to direct our awareness, rather than letting it be dragged about by every stray thought, sound, or sensation. In the present moment is the core instruction. Our minds are constantly time-traveling, lost in reruns of the past or previews of the future. Mindfulness is the practice of gently but firmly bringing our attention back to the only moment that is ever real, right now. The final part, non-judgmentally, is perhaps the most challenging and the most transformative. It is the practice of observing our experience without immediately labeling it as good or bad, right or wrong, like or dislike. We simply allow things to be as they are, meeting our experience with a curious, open, and accepting presence. But how do we train this wandering, judgmental mind? We need an anchor, something that can hold our attention firmly in the present. The most universal and accessible anchor is the breath. The breath is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, and it is always happening now. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future. To be aware of your breath is to be aware of the present moment. The practice can be very simple. You find a comfortable posture, you close your eyes gently, and you bring your attention to the physical sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. You might feel the air at the tip of the nostrils, or the rising and falling of your abdomen. You don't try to control the breath, you just let it be natural, and you rest your attention upon its simple, rhythmic pattern. Inevitably, the mind will wander. A thought, a sound, a memory will pull it away. This is not a failure. This is the moment the practice truly begins. The moment you realize your mind has wandered, you have just had a moment of mindfulness. And then, gently, without any scolding or frustration, you guide your attention back to the breath, again and again and again. Each return is like a repetition in a mental gymnasium, strengthening the muscle of attention. This basic practice is the foundation, and from it, the Buddha taught a comprehensive system for developing mindfulness in all areas of life, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. This begins with the breath, but it expands to include an awareness of our posture. Knowing I am sitting when we are sitting, I am walking when we are walking. It is an awareness of all the small movements and activities of the body throughout the day. It also includes an awareness of the multitude of physical sensations that are constantly occurring. The feeling of our feet on the floor, an itch on the arm, a feeling of warmth or coolness, tension or relaxation. By grounding our attention in the physical reality of the body, we anchor ourselves in the present and begin to see the body not as a solid thing that we have, but as a dynamic process of sensation. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. Here, feelings refers to the raw, immediate tone of experience, which can be categorized into 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Before the mind creates a complex story of anger, love, or sadness, there is a simple, raw sensation. When we taste something delicious, there is a pleasant feeling. When we stub our toe, there is an unpleasant feeling. When we feel the sensation of our clothes on our skin, it is likely a neutral feeling. The practice is to notice these feeling tones as they arise and pass away, without getting caught in our habitual reactions. Normally, we cling to the pleasant, push away the unpleasant, and ignore the neutral. Mindfulness allows us to simply observe them. Ah, this is a pleasant feeling. It is arising. Now it is passing. This practice is a direct antidote to the second arrow. It allows us to experience the raw data of life without being immediately enslaved by our reactions to it. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself. This is a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of being lost in our thoughts and moods, we learn to step back and observe the state of the mind itself. We notice the mind is angry rather than simply being swept away by "I am angry." We observe the mind is distracted, the mind is calm, the mind is filled with craving, the mind is tired. By objectifying the mental state, we cease to identify with it so strongly. We see that these states are not us, but are temporary conditions, like weather patterns passing through the sky of the mind. This non-identification is a key to profound freedom. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, or mental objects. This is the most comprehensive category, where mindfulness becomes fully integrated with wisdom. Here, we observe our experience through the clarifying lens of the Buddha's teachings. We see a thought of desire arise, and we recognize it not just as a thought, but as an instance of tana. We experience a difficult emotion, and we watch it through the framework of the 5 aggregates, seeing it as an impersonal process of sensation, perception, and mental formation. We become aware of the presence or absence of the 5 hindrance essential desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt that obstruct our clarity. Or we notice the presence of the factors of enlightenment, like joy and tranquility. This is where mindfulness and right view merge, and our practice becomes a continuous, living investigation into the nature of reality. This entire practice is not meant to be confined to a meditation cushion. The goal is to bring this quality of present moment awareness into every corner of our lives. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, spoke of washing the dishes. He said that if, while washing the dishes, we are thinking only of the cup of tea that awaits us afterward, then we are not really washing the dishes. We are not truly alive during that time. But if we are fully present, aware of the warm water, the slippery soap, the feel of the plate in our hands, then washing the dishes can become a profound and joyful meditation. The same is true for eating, walking, driving, or listening to a friend. Every moment is an opportunity to wake up. Right mindfulness is the skill of being present for the totality of our lives, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the spectacular and the mundane. It is the master key that unlocks all the other aspects of the path. It is the light that allows us to practice right effort. And as this light of mindfulness becomes steadier and more unwavering, as we are able to hold our attention in the present moment for longer and longer periods, the scattered energies of the mind begin to coalesce. The mind becomes calm, unified, and powerful. This state of collected, one-pointed awareness is the eighth and final factor of the path. It is the culmination of our training. It is the practice of right concentration. We have walked the path of ethics, bringing harmony to our actions and our livelihood. We have cultivated right effort and right mindfulness, learning to gently garden the mind and to anchor our awareness in the living present. Now we arrive at the eighth and final factor of the path, the culmination of all this diligent training. This is right concentration, or sama samadhi. It is the fruit that grows from the soil of ethical conduct, watered by effort, and illuminated by the sun of mindfulness. If right mindfulness is the act of continually gathering our scattered attention, right concentration is the state that results when that attention becomes unified, unwavering, and serene. It is the destination of the mind's journey into stillness, a state of profound peace and power from which true insight can dawn. Imagine your mind is a lake. For most of us, this lake is constantly stirred up by the winds of desire and aversion, the five hindrances. The water is murky with the mud of our restless thoughts, worries, and plans. We cannot see our own reflection clearly, let alone the depths below. The practice of sila, ethical conduct, is like building a strong bank around the lake to prevent pollutants from flowing in. The practice of right effort and mindfulness is the patient work of letting the winds die down, of no longer agitating the surface. Right concentration is what happens when the winds have ceased and the mud has slowly, completely settled to the bottom. The water of the mind becomes perfectly still, crystal clear, and luminous. Now, for the first time, we can see all the way to the bottom. We can see reality just as it is. It is vital to distinguish this state from ordinary, everyday focus. The concentration of a student cramming for an exam is tense and stressful. The focus of a video gamer is agitated and externally directed. Right concentration is none of these. It is an effortless, joyful, and lucid state of inner unification. It is not a trance, not a loss of awareness, but rather a heightening of awareness, narrowed to a single, chosen point. Think of the light of the sun, scattered across the earth. Its warmth is gentle, but when that same light is focused through a magnifying glass onto a single point, it becomes powerful enough to create fire. In the same way, our ordinary, scattered mind is relatively weak, but when its energies are gathered and unified through the lens of concentration, it becomes an instrument of immense power and penetration, capable of burning through the deepest veils of ignorance. Mindfulness and concentration are often described as two wings of the same bird. Both are needed to fly. They are intimately related but distinct. Mindfulness is the broader faculty. It is the shepherd who notices when a sheep has wandered from the flock and gently guides it back. It keeps the bigger picture in view. Concentration is the flock itself, gathered tightly and peacefully together. Mindfulness is the quality that repeatedly brings the attention back to the breath. Concentration is the state of abiding with the breath, moment after moment, without distraction. As our mindfulness becomes more continuous and stable, concentration naturally deepens. This deepening journey into stillness is traditionally described in a series of states known as the jhanas, or meditative absorptions. These are not mystical, otherworldly experiences, but natural potentials of a mind that has been systematically calmed and purified. They are progressive levels of unification, each one more subtle and peaceful than the last. The entry point to the first jhana, is the temporary overcoming of the 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and laziness, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt. As these agitating factors fall away through mindful attention to a meditation object like the breath, a profound shift occurs. This is the first jhana. It is characterized by the arising of 2 distinct qualities of joy, piti and sukha. Piti is often translated as rapture or bliss. It is an energetic, thrilling joy that can manifest as goosebumps, a feeling of lightness, or waves of pleasure washing through the body. It is the wow moment of realizing the mind is finally free from its usual burdens. Alongside it is sukha, a more serene and gentle happiness, a deep sense of contentment and well-being. At this stage, the mind is still active with applied and sustained thought, what is called vitakka vikara. It is the mental activity of placing the mind on the breath and keeping it there. The mind is secluded from the hindrances, unified on its object, and filled with a joy it has never known from the world of the senses. As the mind continues to settle, it no longer needs the active effort of placing and sustaining its attention. The mind and the breath seem to merge, resting together without any strain. At this point, the inner chatter of vitakka vikara fades away completely, and we enter the second jhana. Here, the joy becomes even more profound. The energetic bliss of piti and the calm happiness of sukha remain, but they are now born not of effortful seclusion, but of concentration itself. The mind is like a deep, still lake, fed by an underground spring of pure joy. There is a powerful sense of inner confidence and tranquility. The silence is profound. The external world fades into the distant background. The mind is bathing in a state of self-sustaining bliss, completely content with its object. Continuing on the path of subtlety, the practitioner can learn to let go of even the energetic thrill of piti. While joyful, piti has a certain excitement to it. As it subsides, the mind enters an even more refined and peaceful state. The third jhana. Here, the fizzy, effervescent quality of bliss is replaced by a deep, pervasive, and unshakable happiness, sukha. The defining quality of this state, however, is the powerful emergence of upekkha, or equanimity. The mind is utterly serene, balanced, and imperturbable. The Buddha described the practitioner in this state as being fully mindful and aware, experiencing a happiness that the noble ones call dwelling in peace. It is a sublime and deeply satisfying state of contentment, like a person submerged in a cool, calm spring on a blisteringly hot day, pervaded by coolness in every part of their being. Finally, by letting go of even this sublime happiness, by releasing the last subtle attachment to pleasure and aversion to pain, the mind enters the fourth jhana. This is a state of pure, untroubled equanimity. The breath may become so subtle that it seems to have stopped altogether. All feeling of pleasure, sukha, and pain, dukkha, that is normally experienced through the body and mind completely ceases. What remains is a state of profound stillness, a silent, luminous awareness that is beyond all dualities. The mind is like a great mountain, unmoved by the winds of the world. It is a mirror, perfectly polished and still, reflecting whatever comes before it, without the slightest distortion, judgment, or reaction. This state of pristine clarity and unshakable calm is the ultimate platform for liberating insight. But why cultivate these states? They are not an escape from life, nor are they the final goal. Right concentration serves 2 vital purposes on the path. First, it provides a source of profound happiness and well-being that is entirely internal. It proves to us, through our own direct experience, that we do not need to depend on the fleeting pleasures of the world for our happiness. We discover a refuge, a sanctuary of peace within ourselves that we can return to. This radically weakens the grip of Tana, the thirst for sense pleasures. Why chase after fleeting, troublesome pleasures when a far superior and more nourishing peace is available within? Second, and most importantly, the concentrated mind is the perfect instrument for wisdom. The practice of samadhi develops the sword of concentration. The practice of vipassana, or insight meditation, is the wielding of that sword to cut through ignorance. Once the mind has been unified and stilled in the jhanas, it can be directed to investigate the nature of experience with unparalleled power. From this stable platform, we can turn our sharpened awareness back toward the five aggregate sur, own body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, and see their true nature with penetrating clarity. We see their impermanence, anicca, their inherent unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and their selfless, impersonal nature, anatta, not as intellectual concepts, but as living, undeniable realities. This is the insight that liberates. The Eightfold Path has now been fully explored, from the wisdom of right view to the profound stillness of right concentration. We have followed the prescription, taken the medicine, and established a mind that is healthy, stable, and powerful. The tool has been forged and sharpened to a razor's edge. Now, we are prepared to use this perfected instrument to look again at the world, but with new eyes, capable of seeing the deep, underlying laws that govern our lives and our universe. With a mind stilled and unified, we are ready to explore the intricate workings of karma and the profound web of interbeing that connects us all. Having journeyed through the sublime stillness of right concentration, the mind is now a perfected instrument. It is calm, clear, powerful, and penetrating. With this exquisitely sharpened tool, we can turn our gaze back upon the world and begin to perceive the deeper, more subtle laws that govern existence, laws that were previously obscured by the dust of our own mental agitation. The first and most fundamental of these laws is the law of karma. Few concepts from Eastern philosophy have so thoroughly entered the Western lexicon, and few have been so profoundly misunderstood. Before we can grasp its true meaning, we must first clear away the fog of popular misconception. Karma is not fate. It is not a pre-written destiny from which there is no escape. It is not a cosmic script that renders our choices meaningless. This fatalistic view is, in fact, the very opposite of what the Buddha taught. Karma is also not a system of reward and punishment meted out by some divine, external judge who keeps a cosmic ledger of our good and bad deeds. There is no celestial court passing sentence upon us. The law of karma is far more intimate, scientific, and ultimately more empowering than any of these interpretations. It is the natural law of cause and effect as it applies to intentional action. It is as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. Gravity does not judge you for stepping off a cliff. It simply operates. In the same way, karma is the principle that our actions have consequences, and that the nature of those consequences is intrinsically linked to the nature of the actions that created them. The Buddha's unique and revolutionary contribution to the understanding of karma was his emphasis on one crucial factor: intention. In Pali, the word for karma, simply means action. But the Buddha clarified this with a precise and profound definition. It is intention, O monks, he said, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. This is the key that unlocks the entire teaching. The ethical quality of an action, its power to create a result, is determined by the intention behind it. An action performed with an intention rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion is an unwholesome, or a kusala, action. An action performed with an intention rooted in their opposite's generosity, loving kindness, and wisdomis, a wholesome or kusala action. It is the quality of the will, the motivation behind the deed, that plants the karmic seed. To accidentally step on an ant while walking is a world away, karmically, from intentionally crushing it out of anger. The physical act may be similar, but the intention, the karma, is entirely different. Our intentions express themselves through 3 doors: body, speech, and mind. Every intentional physical act, every intentional word spoken, and even every silent, intentional thought creates karma. In fact, the mind is the forerunner. A thought of ill will is a karmic seed, even if it never translates into hostile words or violent action. It conditions the mind toward negativity and will eventually bear its own unpleasant fruit. Thus, our inner life, the very texture of our thoughts, is a constant process of shaping our future. To understand how karma works, the most helpful analogy is that of a farmer planting a field. Every intentional action is like planting a seed. An act of kindness is like planting a seed from a sweet mango. An act of cruelty is like planting a seed of bitter thistle. The farmer knows that he cannot sow thistle seeds and hope to harvest mangoes. The law is simple: as you sow, so shall you reap. The kind of seed planted determines the kind of fruit that will eventually grow. This process, however, is not always immediate. Just because a farmer plants a seed today does not mean a tree will appear tomorrow. The seed needs time to germinate. It needs the right conditions: fertile soil, water, sunlight. In the same way, our karmic seeds do not always ripen immediately. Some actions produce results in this very life. Others may lie dormant, waiting for the right conditions to ripen in the future. This explains the apparent injustices we so often see in the world. Why do some seemingly good people suffer terrible misfortunes, while some cruel and dishonest people live in luxury? A superficial understanding of karma would find this baffling, but a deeper understanding sees that all beings are complex fields, filled with countless seeds, planted over an immense period of time. The cruel person enjoying wealth today may simply be experiencing the fruit of some powerful, generous actions from their past, while simultaneously planting seeds of immense future suffering with their present cruelty. The good person experiencing hardship may be facing the ripening of old, unwholesome karma, while their present kindness is sowing the seeds for future happiness. We are always doing 2 things at once: harvesting the fruits of our past and planting the seeds for our future. This understanding is the ultimate antidote to despair and helplessness. It places the full responsibility and the full power for our lives directly in our own hands. We are not the victims of a capricious fate. We are the architects of our own reality. While we cannot go back in time to unplant the unwholesome seeds we have already sown, the present moment offers us complete and total agency. This very moment is the only field we can ever cultivate. Right now, we have the choice. We can continue to unconsciously sow the seeds of anger, greed, and confusion, ensuring a future harvest of pain. Or, right now, we can begin to consciously, intentionally plant the seeds of kindness, generosity, and clarity. The past is a memory, but the present is a point of power. Every moment is an opportunity to change the direction of our lives. Furthermore, our practice on the Eightfold Path can influence the conditions in which old seeds ripen. By cultivating a mind of mindfulness and compassion, we change the quality of the soil of our own consciousness. A mind that is spacious, kind, and resilient can experience the ripening of a negative karmic result with far less suffering than a mind that is tight, angry, and reactive. A difficult event landing in a mind filled with wisdom and equanimity is like a spoonful of salt thrown into a great river. Its effect is diluted and barely noticeable. That same spoonful of salt thrown into a small teacup makes the entire cup undrinkably bitter. Our practice doesn't necessarily stop the fruits of past actions from arriving, but it radically changes our capacity to meet them with grace. The ultimate goal of the path is not just to create good karma that leads to pleasant future lives. It is to transcend the entire cycle of karmic creation altogether. Good karma is still karma. It still binds us to the wheel of becoming, to the cycle of birth and death. The final goal is to uproot the very source of karma itself, the intentions born of greed, hatred, and ignorance. When the three poisons are completely extinguished from the mind, our actions no longer plant new seeds. They become what is called karmaless actions, pure responses of wisdom and compassion that leave no trace, creating no future result. This is the action of a liberated being, an arhat or a Buddha. It is the end of the cycle, the attainment of nirvana. Understanding the law of karma correctly is a profound call to wakefulness and responsibility. It reveals that our happiness and suffering are not random accidents, but the predictable results of our own mental, verbal, and physical behavior. Every thought matters. Every word matters. Every act matters. Seeing this clearly and deeply, with the stilled mind developed through the path, inspires not fear, but a deep and urgent motivation to live a wholesome life. It naturally leads us to want to cultivate the most powerful and beneficial intentions possible. And there are no intentions more wholesome, more powerful for creating happiness for ourselves and others than the boundless states of goodwill and compassion. A deep and authentic understanding of karma does not lead to a cold, calculating morality. It does not turn us into spiritual accountants, meticulously tracking our good and bad deeds. Instead, a true seeing of this universal law of cause and effect blossoms into its natural emotional expression, a profound and boundless compassion. When we truly see that every being we encounter, without exception, is subject to the same laws as we are, that they are all planting seeds and harvesting fruits, all fundamentally seeking happiness and wishing to avoid suffering, all often creating more suffering for themselves out of ignorance and confusion, the heart cannot help but soften. The harsh lines of judgment begin to dissolve. We see ourselves in the struggles of others, and we see their struggles in our own. From this fertile ground of wisdom, the two most beautiful and powerful flowers of the path begin to grow. These are metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion. These are not passive emotions. They are active, boundless, and intentional states of mind, deliberately cultivated until they become our natural disposition. They are the heart's answer to the suffering of the world. Their power to transform is legendary. It is told that the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, consumed by hatred, devised a plan to assassinate him. He got an elephant named Nalagiri drunk on intoxicants until it became a raging, unstoppable beast, and then unleashed it onto the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. People screamed and fled in terror, but the Buddha did not run. He did not raise a weapon. He simply stood his ground, looked at the charging, trumpeting elephant, and radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure loving kindness. The elephant, which had been an instrument of pure fury, felt this immense wave of fearless goodwill. Its rage subsided, its steps slowed. It came before the Buddha, humbled and calm, and knelt before him. This story illustrates a core principle. Compassion is not weakness. It is a source of immense, fearless strength, a power that can disarm the most violent hatred. The foundation of this power is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is the sincere, unconditional wish for all beings to be happy and well. It is an attitude of radical friendliness toward all of existence, It is not the conditional, transactional love we are often used to, which depends on whether someone pleases us or meets our needs. Metta is boundless. It is a practice that systematically breaks down the walls our ego has built between me and them, friend and enemy. The cultivation of metta is a formal meditation, a training of the heart. It begins in the one place we so often neglect, with ourselves. We find a quiet place, and we silently repeat phrases of well-wishing directed inward. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. This is not an act of narcissism. It is a vital first step. We cannot offer a cool drink to a thirsty traveler if our own well is dry. We cannot truly wish for others to be happy if we are at war with ourselves. Self-compassion is the necessary foundation for all true compassion. Many find this the most difficult step, but it is the most essential. We learn to become our own best friend. Once we have established a baseline of kindness toward ourselves, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a dear friend or a benefactor, someone for whom we feel easy and uncomplicated love. We hold their image in our mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. We let our heart fill with this genuine feeling of goodwill. Next, we stretch the muscle of the heart further. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see often but have no strong feelings about, a cashier at the store, a person we pass on the street. We recognize that this person, too, wants to be happy, just like us, and we extend the same sincere wishes to them. This practice begins to break down the walls of indifference that separate us from the vast majority of humanity. Then comes the most challenging and transformative stage. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us, and we attempt, as best we can, to extend the same wishes of well-being to them. May you be happy. May you be well. This is a profound practice of healing. It is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is not about forcing a reconciliation. It is a recognition that their harmful actions likely sprang from their own deep suffering and delusion. By wishing them well, we perform a kind of spiritual alchemy. We refuse to let their poison become our poison. We liberate our own heart from the prison of resentment, bitterness, and hatred. We choose freedom over being right. Finally, we radiate this feeling of metta outwards in all directions, to all beings, without exception, friends, enemies, neutral people, humans, animals, beings, in all realms, seen and unseen. May all beings everywhere be happy. We let our heart become as boundless as space itself. When this boundless heart of metta encounters suffering, it transforms into karuna, or compassion. If metta is the general wish for wellness, karuna is the specific, active wish for a being to be free from their pain. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is the feeling that moves us to action. It is essential to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity establishes a distance. Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad I am not you. It looks down from a position of superiority. Compassion closes the distance. I feel this with you. Your suffering touches me. It is based on a sense of shared humanity, of equality in our vulnerability to pain. Karuna arises from the wisdom that says, this could be me. The cultivation of metta and karuna is the ultimate healing practice. Anger and hatred cannot coexist in a mind filled with loving kindness. Fear and anxiety are diminished when we feel a friendly connection to the world rather than a hostile alienation from it. The loneliness that plagues modern society begins to dissolve when we recognize our shared condition with all beings. These practices directly dismantle the illusion of the separate self the very structure of the meditation starting with me, moving to you, and ending with Alice, a systematic deconstruction of the ego's boundaries. When we genuinely wish for all beings to be free from suffering, the distinction between self and other becomes porous and transparent. The heart, in its wisdom, begins to understand what the intellect can only grasp at. It begins to experience directly the profound truth that we are all in this together. This emotional and experiential dissolving of the self is the perfect preparation for looking directly at the ultimate nature of that self, leading us to a deeper, more liberating insight into the truth of anatta, or not self. The practice of boundless compassion, of metta and karuna, performs a strange and wonderful alchemy on the heart. As we genuinely extend our wish for happiness to all beings, the rigid, fortified walls we build around our own sense of self begin to soften. The distinction between my happiness and your happiness becomes less absolute. The border between my suffering and your suffering becomes porous and permeable. The heart, in its wisdom, begins to suspect a profound truth that the intellect finds terrifying. Perhaps the separate, isolated self we have spent our entire lives protecting and promoting is not as solid as it appears. Now, with a mind made both kind by compassion and sharp by concentration, we are ready to undertake the most radical investigation of the path. We turn the lens of awareness onto the investigator itself. We begin to ask the ultimate question: who am I? This is the deeper dive into the insight of anatta, or not self. From our first breath, we have operated on a fundamental, unexamined assumption. The assumption is that inside this body, behind these eyes, there is a core being, a thinker of the thoughts, a feeler of the feelings, a permanent and continuous me. This I is the protagonist in the epic movie of our life. It is the hero we cheer for, the victim we feel sorry for, the CEO we try to make successful, the defendant we endlessly justify. Our ego is the narrator, judge, and jury of our entire existence. We live in constant service to this self, trying to acquire pleasures for it, defend it from slights, and protect it from its ultimate fear, its own annihilation. The Buddha's teaching on anatta is a direct and fearless challenge to this fundamental assumption. It suggests that this solid, independent self we feel so intimately is, in fact, an illusion. It is a beautiful, complex, and convincing trick of the mind, but a trick nonetheless. To hear this for the first time can be frightening, but the Buddha did not teach this to annihilate us. He taught it to liberate us. He saw that this illusory self is the root of all our clinging, the source of all our fear, and the ultimate cause of our suffering. The discovery of its emptiness is not a death, but the end of a lifelong imprisonment. There is a classic Zen story that illuminates this. A man is rowing his boat upstream in a thick fog. Suddenly, another boat crashes into his from out of nowhere. A surge of anger flashes through him. He opens his mouth to scream curses at the idiot who has so carelessly smashed into his boat. But as he looks closer, he sees that the other boat is empty. There is no one to blame. In that instant, his anger vanishes completely. He is left only with the simple reality of the situation. Two boats have bumped in the fog. The story asks us to consider, where did the anger come from, and where did it go? The anger was entirely dependent on the existence of a you in the other boat to receive the blame from the me in this boat. When the you was revealed to be an illusion, the me who was so grievously wronged suddenly had no ground to stand on, and the anger, having no fuel, simply dissolved. The practice of investigating not self is the practice of looking closely, again and again, to see if our own boat is, in fact, just as empty. To aid this investigation, the Buddha provided an analytical toolkit, the teaching of the 5 aggregates, or skandhas, which we have met before. He taught that what we conventionally call a person is nothing more than a temporary coming together of 5 distinct processes: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Right view of anatta involves methodically examining each of these 5 components and searching for a permanent, independent self within them. We begin with the first aggregate, form. This is the physical body, with its flesh, blood, and bones. This seems to be the most obvious candidate for a self. We point to it and say, "This is me." But let us look closer. Is this body permanent? Absolutely not. It is a living monument to anicca, impermanence. It is constantly changing, aging, growing, and decaying. The cells that compose it are dying and being replaced by the millions. The body you have now is not the same body you had 7 years ago, or even 7 minutes ago. Is it under our ultimate control? We cannot command it not to age, not to get sick, not to feel pain. It operates according to its own biological laws. Is it truly us? It is composed entirely of not us elements, the food, water, and air we have taken from the environment. This body is a borrowed and temporary vessel. To look for a solid, unchanging self in this river of flesh is to look for a solid rock in a flowing stream. We must conclude, this body is not me, not mine, not myself. Next, we investigate feeling. This is the aggregate of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations that arise from contact with the world. A pleasant taste, a painful memory, the neutral feeling of the air on our skin. Are these feelings me? They are even more fickle and transient than the body. They arise, they exist for a fleeting moment, and they vanish, completely dependent on external stimuli. Our entire life is a desperate chase after pleasant feelings and a frantic flight from unpleasant ones, all under the mistaken assumption that these feelings define our happiness and our identity. But to build a self on a foundation of feelings is to build a house on the weather. A passing cloud of sadness does not mean I am a sad person. It means sadness is passing through. A flash of joy does not mean I am a happy person. It means joy is present in this moment. These feelings are impersonal events, arising and ceasing due to causes and conditions. We must conclude, these feelings are not me, not mine, not myself. The third aggregate is perception. This is the mind's faculty of recognizing, identifying, and labeling. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and labels it tree. It hears a vibration in the air and labels it music. It feels a sensation and labels it anger. Is this process of labeling the self? Perception is utterly conditioned by our past, our language, our culture, our education, and our personal history all determine how we label and interpret the raw data of our senses. Two people can witness the exact same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perception is a biased, conditioned filter, a useful tool for navigating the world, but it is not a pure reflection of reality, and it is certainly not a self. We must conclude, this perception is not me, not mine, not myself. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a vast category that includes all our volitional activities, our thoughts, moods, habits, opinions, beliefs, desires, and aversions. This is the aggregate that feels most personal, most like me. It is the inner storyteller, the voice that narrates our life, the one that plans, worries, judges, and remembers. But when we look with a mindful, concentrated attention, we see that these mental formations are also impersonal processes. Thoughts arise in the mind unbidden. Where did that thought come from? We don't know. It simply appeared. Our moods shift according to countless conditions. Our habits are just patterns of conditioning repeated over time. These mental formations are the most active and turbulent of the aggregates, the very engine of our karma, but they are not a solid entity. They are a stream of conditioned mental events. We must conclude, these mental formations are not me, not mine, not myself. Finally, we come to the fifth aggregate, consciousness. This is the basic faculty of awareness, the simple knowing of an object. Eye consciousness knows a sight, ear consciousness knows a sound, mind consciousness knows a thought. We might think that this pure awareness, this knowing presence, must be the true self, the stable witness behind the whole show. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness itself is also a conditioned, dependent process. It is never found on its own. It is always consciousness of something. Eye consciousness cannot exist without an eye and a visible object. It arises in the meeting of the two, and it ceases when they separate. It is not a continuous, singular spotlight of awareness shining from within. It is more like a series of discrete sparks, flashing into existence from moment to moment, each one dependent on a specific sense organ and a specific sense object. It is a flickering, dependent arising. We must conclude, this consciousness is not me, not mine, not myself. After we have taken the chariot apart piece by piece and found no chariot, what are we left with? We are left with the liberating truth. The self is not a thing, but a process. It is not a noun, but a verb. It is a story that the mind tells itself, a convenient fiction it constructs by stringing together these 5 fleeting processes and labeling the resulting bundle me. It's a useful convention for buying groceries and talking to our friends, but it has no ultimate inherent reality. To cling to it as real is the source of all our trouble. When we believe in this solid self, we are constantly afraid of it being harmed, insulted, diminished, or destroyed. When we see through it, we are released from this immense burden. What does it feel like? It is not a cold, empty void. It is a warm, liberating spaciousness. It is the feeling of putting down a heavy bag you have been carrying your entire life without even knowing it. The anger that arises when someone cuts you off in traffic loses its fuel, because the me who was so personally offended is seen to be an illusion. The anxiety about an upcoming presentation subsides, because the fragile I who might fail is understood to be a mental construct. We become more resilient, more flexible, more fearless. When we let go of the fiction of the separate self, we do not disappear. We discover what we have been all along, not an isolated island, but a wave in the great ocean of existence. We see that we are not separate from the world, but are a seamless manifestation of it. And this seeing, this deep, experiential understanding that the boundaries of the self are illusory, leads us to the next profound insight. It opens our eyes to the intricate, beautiful, and inescapable web of connection that links all things. It leads us to the wisdom of interbeing. The great investigation into the nature of the self has led us to a startling conclusion. After taking apart the chariot of our being, piece by piece the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts, the consciousness, we found no solid, independent driver in the seat. This discovery of not self, of anatta, can initially feel like a loss, a pulling of the rug out from under our feet. But what rushes in to fill that empty space is not a cold void, but a warm, vibrant, and breathtaking vision of reality. Having seen what we are known to separate, isolated island, we are now free to discover what we are. And the answer to that is, we are the entire ocean. This is the wisdom of interbeing. This beautiful term, brought to the West by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, is a modern expression of the Buddha's ancient teaching of dependent origination, or paticca samuppada. It is the understanding that nothing exists independently on its own. Everything in the cosmos arises in dependence upon everything else. To be is to interbe. We are all inextricably interconnected in a vast and intricate web of causes and conditions. Let us explore this with a simple meditation using an object you can hold in your hand or easily visualize. A single sheet of paper. Look at this sheet of paper. We see it as a single, separate thing. But let us look more deeply with the eyes of wisdom. Where did this paper come from? It came from a tree. So, in this sheet of paper, we can see the tree, the tall pine or eucalyptus, standing in the forest. Now, look closer at the tree. A tree cannot grow without water, so we must see the rain that nourished the tree. And where does the rain come from? It comes from the clouds. So, in this sheet of paper, we can clearly see a cloud floating in the sky. Without the cloud, there can be no paper. Let us continue. A tree and a cloud cannot exist without the sun. The immense, fiery energy of the sun is necessary for the process of photosynthesis, for the very life of the tree and the formation of the cloud. So, in this sheet of paper, we can feel the warmth of the sunshine. And what of the person who cut down the tree, the logger? We must see the logger in the paper. And the logger needed parents to be born. So, the logger's mother and father are also here, in this sheet of paper. And the logger had to eat to have the strength to do his work. So, we see the wheat in the fields that became his bread, and the farmer who grew the wheat. We see the person who made his axe, and the miners who dug the iron ore from the earth. And we see that the name we give this object, paper, comes from a language, from a culture, from a long history of human communication. All of these things are present right now in this seemingly simple sheet of paper. Now, let us try to remove these non-paper elements. Take away the sunshine. Can the paper exist? Number. Take away the cloud and the rain. Can the paper exist? Number. Take away the tree, the logger, the farmer. The paper vanishes. If we return to the paper, everything that we thought was not paper, we find that the paper is made up of only non-paper elements. It has no separate, independent self-existence. Its being is an interbeing, a temporary manifestation of the entire cosmos. It is empty of a separate self, but it is full of everything. Now, let us turn this same insightful gaze upon ourselves. We look at our own hand. What do we see? We see our mother and our father, and all our ancestors stretching back through time, for without them, this hand could not be here. We look into our breakfast, and we see the wheat fields, the sunshine, the rain, the farmer, the baker, the truck driver. Their lives and labor have become our own body. We take a breath, and we see the reality of the air, the miraculous ocean of oxygen that sustains us, a gift from the trees and the phytoplankton of the sea. We are breathing the atmosphere. The atmosphere is breathing us. We see our teachers, the people whose ideas and words have shaped our minds. We see the architects and builders who constructed the home that shelters us. We see the culture that gave us our language, our music, our stories. If we try to remove all these non-me elements from ourselves, what is left? If we take away our parents, our food, the air, the water, our education, our relationships, everything that we have received from the world, is there any me that remains? The answer, just as with the sheet of paper, is no. The self we call me is empty of any separate, independent existence, but it is full of the entire universe. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself as a temporary, beautiful, and unique pattern. The boundary between self and other, between inside and outside, is a mental construct, a useful convention, but ultimately an illusion. This insight is not just a beautiful piece of poetry or philosophy. It is the most powerful and urgent teaching for our time, with profound ethical implications. When we truly see and feel our interbeing with the planet, environmental destruction ceases to be a political issue and becomes an act of self-harm. To pollute the river is to poison our own veins. To cut down the forest is to destroy our own lungs. A sense of ecological responsibility arises not from a sense of moral duty, but from a simple, visceral recognition of fact. We are not protecting something out there. We are protecting ourselves. Likewise, when we see our interbeing with all people, the foundations of hatred, jealousy, and social injustice crumble. How can we maintain an us versus them mentality when we see that their suffering and our suffering are deeply interconnected? How can we exploit another person when we see that their well-being is intrinsically linked to our own? The pain of a hungry child on the other side of the world is not separate from us. That child is with us. The joy of a friend is not separate from us. It is a part of our own joy. This understanding is the soil from which true compassion and social action grow. It moves us from a place of charity, of giving from a position of separation, to a place of solidarity, of acting from a position of unity. In the ancient Buddhist scriptures, this reality is depicted with the stunning image of Indra's net, a vast cosmic net that stretches to infinity in all directions. At every intersection of the net, there is a perfect, shining jewel. And if you look closely at any single jewel, you will see that its polished surface reflects every other jewel in the entire net. Each jewel contains all the others. So it is with us. Each of us contains the whole of reality. We are never, and can never be, alone. We are a nexus point where the entire universe converges. We are a note in a cosmic symphony, a thread in a divine tapestry. When we truly feel this deep unity, our entire relationship to life begins to shift. The frantic desire to grasp one part of the universal flow, like pleasure, and to push away another part, like pain, begins to seem illogical and futile. We see that it is all one process, one dance. This realization is the gateway to the final great skill of the spiritual life, the profound and gentle art of letting go, the journey of wisdom, from seeing impermanence to understanding not self, and finally to feeling the truth of interbeing, leads to a single, inescapable conclusion. The act of grasping is futile. The act of clinging to any part of this ceaseless, selfless, interconnected flow is like trying to capture the wind in a fist or hold the river in our arms. It is a struggle against the fundamental nature of reality, and this struggle is the very essence of our suffering. And so, we arrive at the great practice that is the culmination of all wisdom, the art of letting go. This is not a passive resignation or a lazy indifference. It is an active, courageous, and deeply intelligent release. It is the unclenching of the fist of the mind, and the discovery of the profound peace that comes when we finally cease our struggle with what is. We begin by letting go of the past. Our minds are like museums of old grievances and faded glories. We wander through the halls of memory, reopening wounds of past mistakes, reliving moments of shame and regret. We endlessly fire second, third, and fourth arrows at ourselves for things that are long since over. The past is a cancelled check. It has no currency in the present moment. To let go of the past is to practice a radical form of forgiveness, especially toward ourselves. We must understand that the person who made those mistakes in the past did so out of the ignorance and conditions present at that time. We are not that person anymore. To continue punishing ourselves for their actions is to chain ourselves to a ghost. Letting go of the past means accepting that it cannot be changed, and gently but firmly returning our attention to the only time we can ever live and act, right now. But the past is not only made of pain. We also cling to its pleasures. We become trapped in the amber of nostalgia, endlessly replaying a golden age in our mind's eye, past relationship, a time of youthful success, a moment of perfect happiness. By constantly looking backward to these cherished memories, we devalue the present. We compare the reality of now with an idealized, edited version of then, and now always comes up short. This clinging to past happiness is just as much a prison as clinging to past pain. It prevents us from showing up for the life that is unfolding right in front of us. Letting go means cherishing the memories without trying to live in them. It is to see them as beautiful moments in the river of our life, but to keep our own boat flowing with the current, not anchored to a long-gone shore. Next, we learn to let go of the future. If the past is the home of regret, the future is the landscape of anxiety. We spend countless hours of our precious present moment worrying about things that have not happened and may never happen. We create elaborate catastrophe fantasies, suffering in our imagination 1,000 times over for an event that may never come to pass. This is rooted in our deep-seated desire to control the uncontrollable. We want a guarantee of security, of success, of health, but life offers no such guarantees. The future is, by its very nature, unknown and unknowable. To let go of the future is to release our desperate grip on outcomes. We can plan with wisdom, we can act with skill and intention in the present, but we must relinquish our attachment to the results. We do our best, and then we let the universe do its part. This is an act of profound trust, a relaxation into the uncertainty of life, which brings a peace that no amount of anxious planning can ever provide. This also means letting go of our rigid blueprints for how our life should be. We carry in our minds a detailed script for our career, our relationships, our personal growth. When reality inevitably deviates from this script, we experience frustration, anger, and disappointment. We are trying to force the living, unpredictable river of life into the narrow, man-made channel of our expectations. Letting go is the wisdom to throw away the script and learn to improvise, to dance with life as it is, not as we demand it to be. Having let go of the past and the future, we come to the most subtle and profound letting go of all. And for this, the Buddha told a famous parable. A man was traveling and came to the bank of a vast and dangerous river. There was no bridge and no ferry. He knew he had to cross to reach safety on the other side. So, with great effort and ingenuity, he gathered reeds, vines, and branches and built a simple raft. Holding onto the raft, he kicked and paddled his way through the treacherous currents, and finally, exhausted but safe, he arrived on the far shore. Now, the Buddha asked his monks, what should this man do with the raft? Because it was so incredibly useful, because it saved his life, should he hoist it onto his shoulders and carry it with him on his journey across the land? No, master, the monks replied. That would be a foolish burden. He should moor the raft at the shore or push it back into the stream and continue his journey unencumbered. Exactly so, the Buddha said, and in the same way, I have taught you the Dhamma, the teachings, as a raft, for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of holding on to. This is a startling and radical instruction. The raft represents everything we have learned on the path, the ethical precepts, the meditation techniques, the philosophical insights, even the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path itself. These are essential, life-saving tools for crossing the dangerous river of samsara, the ocean of suffering. But they are not the destination. The destination is the other, sure liberation, nirvana. Once we have arrived, to continue clinging to the tools that got us there is to turn a tool into a burden. This is the danger of spiritual materialism, the ego's subtle way of co-opting the spiritual path for its own self-aggrandizement. We can become attached to our identity as a Buddhist or a meditator. We can become proud of our spiritual accomplishments or the deep states of concentration we can achieve. We can cling to the teachings themselves, turning them from a living, pragmatic guide into a rigid, lifeless dogma. We can use our intellectual understanding of concepts like not-self to create a new, more sophisticated ego, a spiritual self that looks down on those who do not understand. This is the final and most difficult thing to let go of. It is the willingness to abandon even the raft that saved us. It is the ultimate release into a state of pure, unadorned knowing, free from all concepts, views, and identities. It is the finger letting go of the moon after it has pointed the way. The art of letting go, then, is a comprehensive practice that touches every aspect of our lives. It is the release of the stories that bind us to the past, the anxieties that project us into the future, and finally, the very concepts and identities that we used to find our freedom. When we have let go of all that can be let go of, what remains? What remains is the pure, luminous awareness of the present moment, experienced without preference, without judgment, and without resistance. Our relationship to life is no longer a battle to be won or a problem to be solved. It becomes a reality to be met, fully and without reservation. This leads us to the doorstep of a profound state of being, the quiet and radical practice of unconditional acceptance. The art of letting go clears the landscape of our minds. By releasing our grip on the past and our anxieties about the future, we are left with the only reality we ever truly have, the pure, unadorned present moment. And here, at the culmination of our journey, we encounter the final great practice, the one that integrates all that has come before. It is the practice of unconditional acceptance. This is not a practice of doing, but of non-doing. It is the cessation of our longest and most exhausting war, the war against what is. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to judge our experience. We divide reality into two camps, the things we like and the things we don't. When the present moment aligns with our desires, we call it good and we cling to it. When it does not, we call it bad and we resist it, fight it, or flee from it. This constant habit of judging and resisting is the relentless engine of our discontent. It is the ever-present source of the second arrow. Unconditional acceptance is the radical, liberating alternative. It is the wisdom to meet every moment exactly as it is, with an open, undefended, and peaceful heart. There is an old Taoist story that perfectly illustrates this profound wisdom. It is the story of a farmer and his horse. One day, the farmer's only horse, his most prized possession, runs away. His neighbors come to console him. "Oh, what terrible luck," they say. The farmer simply shrugs and replies, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, the horse returns, and it brings with it a herd of 7 wild horses. The neighbors gather again, this time to celebrate. "What incredible good luck," they exclaim. The farmer looks at the herd and says, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son is trying to tame one of the wild horses. He is thrown from its back, and his leg is badly broken. The neighbors come once more, shaking their heads. "How awful! Your son is injured. Truly, this is the worst of luck." The farmer, tending to his son, replies calmly, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks pass, and the army comes to the village. A war has broken out, and they are conscripting every able-bodied young man to fight in a brutal and deadly conflict. They see the farmer's son with his broken leg and pass him by. He is spared. The neighbors, whose own sons have been taken away, look at the farmer with awe. "You were right all along," they say. Your son being spared, what amazing good luck. And the farmer, watching the soldiers disappear down the road, says once again, good luck? Bad luck? Who knows? This story is a powerful teaching on the limitations of human judgment. We see only a tiny fragment of an immense, interconnected web of causes and effects that stretches infinitely into the past and the future. An event that appears to be a disaster in the moment may be the very thing that saves us from a greater tragedy later on. An apparent stroke of good fortune may contain the seeds of a future downfall. The farmer's wisdom lies in his humility. He understands that he does not have the whole picture, and so he refrains from judgment. He accepts each event, not as good or bad, but simply as what is happening. This is the essence of unconditional acceptance. It is absolutely crucial to understand what this acceptance is not. It is not passivity. It is not resignation. It is not becoming a helpless victim of circumstance. This is the most common misunderstanding. The farmer did not simply let the wild horses run away again. His son took the action of trying to tame them. Acceptance is not about giving up. It is the vital first step toward wise and effective action. Imagine your house is on fire. Passivity is sitting in a chair and saying, well, I guess my house is burning down. There's nothing to be done. This is not acceptance. This is despair. True acceptance is the clear, calm, and immediate recognition of the reality of the situation. This house is on fire. This clear seeing, free from the panic of denial. This can't be happening. And the paralysis of judgment, this is a disaster, allows for the most effective response. Because you have accepted the reality, you can immediately and skillfully find a fire extinguisher, get your family out, or call for help. Acceptance is the prerequisite for all intelligent action. It is about seeing the situation clearly, without the fog of our own resistance. Similarly, acceptance is not the same as condoning or approving of harmful behavior. If you are in an abusive situation, acceptance does not mean saying, this is okay, I approve of this. It means looking at the situation with stark clarity and saying, I am in a situation where harm is occurring. This honest, non-denial of reality is the source of the strength needed to take protective action, to set boundaries, or to leave. To accept the reality of injustice in the world does not mean we approve of it. It means we see it clearly, which empowers us to work for change from a place of grounded wisdom rather than blind, reactive rage. So, how do we cultivate this state in our own lives? It begins with a simple, internal shift. We can practice, in any given moment, of meeting our experience with an inner yes. When a difficult emotion like anxiety arises, instead of our usual reaction of, no, go away, I hate this feeling, we can soften and say, yes, I see you are here. Anxiety is present in this moment. This yes is not a yes of enjoyment, but a yes of acknowledgement. It is a truce in our inner war. When we are stuck in traffic, instead of the litany of no's, I hate this, this shouldn't be happening, we can take a breath and say, yes, this is the reality of this moment. I am in traffic. In this simple act of acknowledging and allowing, a space opens up. The second layer of suffering, the suffering of our resistance, begins to dissolve. We can practice this directly with the body. Physical pain is an unavoidable part of life, but most of our suffering around pain comes from our mental resistance to it. We tense up around the pain. We create stories about it. This will never end. We hate it. We fear it. This mental contraction is a second layer of pain on top of the raw physical sensation. The practice of acceptance is to gently bring a soft, allowing awareness to the sensation itself. We breathe into it. We let it be there without fighting it. We investigate its qualities with curiosity. Is it burning, throbbing, sharp, Does it change? Paradoxically, when we stop fighting the pain, its power to make us suffer is dramatically reduced. We can do the same with difficult emotions. Instead of distracting ourselves from sadness, we can allow ourselves to feel it fully. Where is it in the body? What does it feel like? We create a safe, compassionate space within ourselves for the emotion to exist. We realize that it is just a weather pattern, a cloud passing through the vast sky of our awareness. By allowing it to be there, we rob it of its power. The things we resist persist. The things we accept transform. Ultimately, the practice is to embody the wisdom of the old farmer. It is to catch our mind in its ceaseless act of labeling everything as good or bad, lucky or unlucky. When we get the promotion, we can celebrate, but also whisper to ourselves, good luck, bad luck, who knows? When we face a setback, we can feel the disappointment, but also remember the farmer's wisdom. This cultivates a deep humility and a profound sense of peace. We are no longer tossed about on the violent waves of fortune and misfortune, because we have stopped giving them those names. We learn to ride the waves of life with an unshakable inner balance. This radical acceptance of each moment as it unfolds is the ultimate expression of trust in the universe. It is the peace that passes all understanding. When we are no longer fighting reality, we find that we are, and always have been, perfectly aligned with it. This leads us to the final and all-encompassing realization of our journey. The great truth that sits at the very heart of Zen and all deep spiritual paths. It is the understanding that this moment, exactly as it is, in all its supposed perfection and imperfection, is complete. It is the realization that everything, truly, is as it should be. Our long journey, which began in the frantic, claustrophobic feeling of being trapped by life, has led us through the vast inner landscapes of the mind. We have followed the path of wisdom, seeing the transient, selfless, and interconnected nature of all things. We have walked the path of ethics, bringing our outer life into harmony with this understanding. We have trained the mind in discipline, learning to steady our effort, sharpen our mindfulness, and unify our concentration. We have learned to let go of the past and future, and to meet the present moment with unconditional acceptance. All of these streams of practice and insight now converge and flow into one great, majestic river, a single, all-encompassing realization that is both the journey's end and its eternal beginning. It is the deep, quiet, and liberating understanding that everything is as it should be. This statement may sound simple, perhaps even like a passive or fatalistic platitude, but it is not. It is not a blind belief that we adopt to comfort ourselves. It is a conclusion born of the most rigorous and honest investigation into the nature of reality. It is the final aha moment, when all the pieces of the puzzle click into place, when we understand the law of karma, the intricate web of cause and effect. We see that the present moment is not an accident. It is the lawful and necessary result of an infinite chain of causes and conditions stretching back through all of time. Every single thought, word, and action by every being has contributed to the precise configuration of this very instant. For this moment to be any different than it is, the entire history of the cosmos would have to be different. To argue with this moment, to resist it, and say this shouldn't be happening, is therefore to argue with the entire universe. It is a war we can never win, for we are arguing against a reality that has already arrived. To realize this is to lay down our arms and declare a final, lasting peace with reality itself. This acceptance is not an endorsement of the content of the moment. A tragedy is still tragic. Pain is still painful. Injustice is still unjust. But we see it as the existing weather pattern, the condition that is present. The wisdom lies not in denying the storm, but in realizing we are not in control of it. A master surfer does not command the ocean. She does not shout at the waves to be smaller or gentler. To do so would be absurd. Instead, she studies the ocean. She respects its immense power. She learns its rhythms and its patterns. And through this deep understanding, she learns to move in harmony with the waves, to use their very power to ride with grace, skill, and even joy. Life is this ocean. The events of the world are the waves. To realize that everything is as it should be is to stop being a swimmer who is drowning while fighting the current, and to start becoming the surfer who moves in harmony with the whole. There is a profound Zen story that captures the essence of this transformation. A young, earnest student goes to his master and asks, "Master, what did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replies, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student then asks, "And now, master, what do you do now that you are enlightened?" The master smiles and replies, "I chop wood and I carry water." On the surface, nothing has changed. The outward activities of life remain the same. Before enlightenment, the student chops wood with a mind full of resentment. "Why must I do this chore? My back hurts. I would rather be meditating. I wish I were somewhere else." He carries water with a mind full of striving. "When I finish this, then I can get on with my real practice. This is just an obstacle to my future happiness." His mind is at war with the present moment. He is not really chopping wood. He is thinking about not chopping wood. After enlightenment, the master still chops wood, but now he is just chopping wood. His mind is fully present with the rhythmic swing of the axe, the sharp scent of the pine, the feeling of the handle in his hands. The act of chopping wood has become a meditation, a perfect expression of the present moment. He carries water, and he is fully present with the coolness of the bucket, the shifting weight on his shoulders, the sound of the water sloshing. The act of carrying water has become a dance. The source of his suffering was never the wood or the water. It was his resistance to them. The source of his liberation is not an escape from these mundane tasks, but a complete and total immersion in them. This is the great secret. Freedom is not found by changing our life circumstances, but by changing our relationship to them. It is found right here, in the heart of the ordinary. To live from this place of understanding does not mean we become unfeeling. On the contrary, we begin to feel everything more fully, because our experience is no longer being filtered through the thick screens of judgment, resistance, and fear. Sadness can arise, and we can allow it to wash through us, feeling its poignant, tender quality, without the second arrow of, "This is wrong, I shouldn't be sad." Joy can arise, and we can experience its vibrant, brilliant quality, without the anxious clinging of "I hope this never ends." We can engage with the world, work for justice, love our families, and pursue our goals, but we do so from a place of deep inner ease. We are no longer attached to the outcomes, because we trust the unfolding of the great tapestry of life, knowing that every thread, light and dark, is a necessary part of the whole. This is what it means to come home. For our entire lives, we have been exiles, living in the imaginary lands of a better past or a perfect future. We have been refugees from the present moment. To realize that everything is as it should be is to end our exile. It is to return to the homeland of the here and now, and to find that it was, all along, the very peace we were seeking. It is to look around at the world in all its beauty and all its pain, and to meet it with a quiet mind and an open heart, understanding that this, right now, is exactly it. The journey is complete. The search is over. We have arrived where we always were. Our journey began in a moment of friction, in the quiet desperation of a traffic jam, a potent symbol for a life spent feeling stuck, at war with the present moment. We began by acknowledging our suffering, and we discovered that its deepest roots were not in the world outside, but in the second arrows of our own reactions. From there, we walked a long and ancient path. We diagnosed the universal condition of dukkha and traced its cause to the burning thirst of tanha. We were given the profound hope of nirodha, the cessation of this thirst, and we were handed a map to that far shore, the noble eightfold path. We learned to see with wisdom, to act with kindness, and to train the mind in a discipline of gentle, persistent awareness. We saw the illusion of a separate self dissolve, and in its place, we discovered our profound interconnectedness with all of life. We learned the art of letting go, and finally, the peace of unconditional acceptance. Through this all, a single, unifying truth has emerged. Peace is not a destination we must travel to. It is not a prize to be won after a long and arduous battle. It is not dependent on a perfect life, a perfect relationship, or a perfect state of the world. Peace is our original nature. It is the stillness that is already present, waiting for us beneath the turbulent surface of our thoughts. It is an inner refuge that can be accessed in any moment, regardless of our outer circumstances. The great realization that everything is as it should be is not a weak surrender to fate. It is the ultimate expression of wisdom, the courageous alignment of our mind with reality itself. It is the final laying down of our weapons in the long and painful war against what is, and the discovery of the profound tranquility that comes when the fighting stops. You now have the tools. You do not need anything more than what you already possess. Your breath is your anchor, always available to bring you back to the sanity of the present moment. Your mind is your garden, and you are its caring and capable gardener, able to choose which seeds of thought to cultivate. Every moment of your life, whether you are washing the dishes, walking down the street, or facing a great challenge, is an opportunity to practice. This is not the end of a teaching, but the beginning of your own living exploration. Walk this path with patience. Be kind to yourself when you stumble, and know that the peace you seek is not in some distant future or faraway place. It is right here. It has been with you all along,